Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to Tone Talk with Mark Uzansky and Dave Friedman. Tonight we've got Tim Pierce, the Tim Pierce, on the show tonight. And Tim, how are you? Thanks for joining. Tone Talk with Mark Uzansky and Dave Friedman. Tonight we've got Tim.
Who's that?
That was me.
Okay.
Oh,
the echo's gone. Now I can say hello, right?
Now you can say hello.
My name is Timothy Stephen Pierce, but I understand there's already a Timothy, so we'll call me Tim tonight. But okay. I really am. I'm another Timothy, so but I'll be Tim tonight. So yeah, it's great to be here.
You've been Tim as long as I've known you.
Yeah, you're right.
So
I like Tim better. Well, no, I like Timothy too. I like everybody. I like everything.
See, the difference is the other guy, he spells his name with the I think it's P-E-A-R-C.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the other one.
Yeah, so it's different. It's different.
The other way to do it.
But we always have to clarify. So Timothy, if you're in the chat, we'll say hi. And so Tim, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks. I saw one of these and I really loved it. So I was excited to be here and talk.
Oh, we're excited to have you.
Oh yeah, definitely. It was great to meet you at NAMM.
You too.
You were walking around having fun with Pete?
Oh gosh, yeah, one of the best people I've ever met. And next NAMM, I'm going to go for 3 full days. I'm going to do it right next year. Yeah.
Hey, we have an idea next year. I don't know if we're going to implement it or not, but it might be of interest to you. We were talking about doing a YouTuber sort of video studio in our booth.
I think that's a great idea, and I think you should do it, and I think I should be there a lot.
And if you wanted to do a Tim and Pete's guitar show live from NAMM in a booth with, say, an artist or someone that's floating around, you could do that in our little booth.
Well, the thing is, Pete and I talked about that. In fact, we talked about it with you and Rob about a year and a half or 2 years ago. We were standing there in your kitchen, as it were, and we talked about that idea of doing something at NAMM. So if you actually created a space, we would be all over it. It's something we should have done already. So that's great. Please do, and we'll join you. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we're going to do that. I think it's a good idea for. I haven't worked out all the logistics of it yet, but we will have a room for video. So that's the gist of it for the like your show or some other YouTube channel that wants to record something live from NAMM. Although they probably can't broadcast it there. But
well, if you do that, we will take as many slots as you'll give us, I would suspect. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, we could do that.
More than one.
We'll have some of our gear floating around in the room so it can be used and stuff, of course, obviously.
Great.
And all
that.
That's
awesome.
That'd be great. Yeah.
In fact, I'm just going to book the whole thing right now.
You're thinking about it. You're going, wow, yeah, I think I could we could do a lot of shows from NAMM in 3 days. We could do our whole year's worth of content.
Yeah, we can give somebody else the 8 a.m., but we'll take the rest of the slots.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely.
So are you recovering from NAMM?
Who, me?
Dave, I know you.
Oh, Dave.
Dave, I know.
Yeah, that's
it's tough. That was tough for 4 days.
Well, that was particularly tough after the week after I got home. I got the flu.
Oh yeah, and it's a bad flu.
It's a bad flu, and then I proceeded to give it to my wife and my son, and he's pretty good, but the wife's still fighting it. So
really,
it lingers forever. Is
it one in the chest?
You get rid of it, but then there's still a little bit in the chest or a little bit in the sinuses. It's just hanging on, and you're trying to get it out.
It's bad. I know it.
Yeah, they're recovered. It's okay. But there's still a little coming up,
This is great. I mean, there is nowhere on earth that you would hear this kind of conversation from.
We talk about anything here. Let me tell you.
I mean, I thought we talked about everything, but we don't. You guys talk about everything. So.
There's no filter here.
Yeah.
Well, there's a few. I'd say we try to avoid. I'd say politics of all the things that we don't talk about.
Yeah, right now.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll stay away from that of all things. But everything else is on the table. I'd say.
Okay. All right.
We'll get in too much trouble if we really feel tell our views of that. So,
oh yeah, that just so
no religion either.
So
Yeah,
Tim,
right.
you've been doing the no religion too.
No.
I sound like John Lennon. There we go.
Yeah, correct.
No religion too. Every time I see that from Forrest Gump, that always makes me crack up. You ever see? You must watch like Forrest Gump over and over on cable. I mean, like me. No, when it's on.
Not over and over. No.
Oh, like if it's on, I'll just happen to just watch. So, and whenever they have the Yoko or the John Lennon, he's on like the Dick Cavett show or something.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. But we've got a bunch of questions for Tim. But I don't want to dive right into them. But I just wanted to let you know, Tim. But go ahead, Dave.
Mark.
No, you go ahead. No, you go ahead. All right. So, Tim, you have the Tim and Pete show also, right? How long you guys been doing that?
I think we've been doing it about 2.5 years. He approached me at one point, and I was somewhat skeptical. But he's such a gentleman, and he treats everybody so well, especially me, that it worked from the minute we started it. And we just finished number 16. He's putting it out tonight. It's Larry Basillo, and we're going to keep going. I'm going to get Dweezil Zappa next. I talked to him at NAMM, and he Dweezil asked me to give him guitar lessons in 1990. And so I've known him since then. So yeah, Pete and Tim, it's a joy. People love it. It's hard because the editing is kind of arduous and it's hard to get them done, but we're going to try and find a way to get more of them done. So, you know how it is. It's harder than it looks to get this stuff out the door.
Well, we do a live show, so it's kind of like a little easier.
It's a bit easier.
Editing, something together with music and guitars and amps and stuff.
But I've loved watching your show. I've loved watching it, with all the different artists and just, you and Pete going back and forth playing. And I love the one with Mateus Satio. I think is that how you say his name?
I think it's Assato. Mateus Assato. Yeah.
Yeah. That was fun. Yeah. Just great shows. So keep doing them.
I've talked to people from all over the world who are appreciative of the level of honesty that we achieve. And it's something that you guys do also, and that people really appreciate that when people are not fronting, when people are just being themselves. We haven't had anybody show up with an ego yet. I'm sure it'll happen eventually, but it hasn't happened yet. So it's been nice.
Maybe you should have Ingve on.
I don't know him, but I heard once that he was rehearsing in a Speedo, and so I respect him.
That would be a fun show. That would be interesting, at least.
Yeah.
Well, supposedly he drives around his Ferrari like bare-chested.
Well, I guess that must have been true. Then I can picture him in a rehearsal room wearing only a Speedo with a guitar over his shoulder. I would be very impressed.
The funny thing is no matter what you say, it's just like, boy, he can back it up though, can't he? With chops.
Yeah.
I can play.
I mean, that's for sure. No matter how he is, he can back it up with chops.
Yeah.
There's no doubt he can play. That's for sure.
Yeah, and then don't you want your rock stars to be like that? I do, I suppose. Anyway.
Yeah,
he's still
that's kind of old school.
Yeah,
he is old school. He still pulls up to the guitar center because he lives down here in Florida.
Oh,
and I mean, I haven't seen him in a while, but the last time that I saw was he pulled up his red Ferrari right up to the front of Guitar Center. But just right up to the very door, like just right there, left it parked there, and just went right in. And of course, everybody's like, "Oh, Yngwie,"
Great.
And it's just, and of course, he's wearing the leather pants, the whole deal. It was, he still perpetuates it. But have you seen his setup recently though, or he goes live, where he actually has the band off to the side, and it's all the wall of amps, and the band is
really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent.
Oh yeah, that's great.
I like it.
That's the epitome. So that's cool. So Tim, I've done a lot of reading and in the past, I don't know, few weeks since we met in NAMM and everything, and since we were able to get you on the show, and there's so many people that you worked with, and I was just curious, maybe if you can just give us kind of a quick rundown of your career and how you got started in the music industry and playing, and kind of a quick overview. That'd be nice to have.
Yeah, I've done it enough times that I can do it super fast. I was born in 1958. My love of music comes from Top 40 radio in the 60s. So it's not the guitar in particular that I love about music. It was songs on the radio in the 60s. Then, of course, in the late 60s, along came Hendrix, Clapton, Johnny Winter, B.B. King, Billy Gibbons, all that whole assortment of people. And so I started playing at 12. Hendrix was definitely like a lot of people, he was the main influence, but Clapton also. So I got obsessed with it when I was 12, and I played in bands, and then I played in bars before it was legal to play in bars, but that's a familiar story for musicians. Then at age 21, I was really, really miserable hanging out in Albuquerque, feeling kind of hopeless about doing anything. And my mom gave me her car, and my parents gave me $2,000, and I drove out to LA and started living here. And when I moved here, it was really wonderful because the music business was huge, and Van Halen had been out for 2 years. Now, I saw Van Halen in LA on a vacation just by chance about 3 years prior to that. I'd love to talk about that at some point. But so Van Halen was huge. The Knack was huge. Stevie Wonder was huge. I mean, the music business was huge, and there was work for musicians at every level. I would get paid rehearsal gigs out of the Recycler. Remember the Recycler?
Oh, yeah, I do.
Yeah. I moved here, and I met one musician who introduced me to another musician, and that musician got me 2 more gigs. So it started to open up like a tree. And I remember there was a point where I had $700 in my bank account, and I was able to keep that $700 in my bank account and start buying gear.
Oh,
and I knew that somehow I was actually supporting myself in LA. Now, that's not doable now. It's too expensive. We're kind of like Manhattan at this point. But I rented a house with Ricky Phillips from the Babies, and which I don't know if anybody remembers that band. He's still a really dear friend of mine.
Yeah,
and another dear friend named Kim Turner, and we rented a house for $700 a month in North Hollywood. So my nut was $233.
Wow!
Excellent.
Okay, then
now, fast forward to today. That would be about 1,000.
Yeah,
split 3.
Right.
No.
More.
That house would be $3,500 a month now.
Maybe 4.
Maybe 4. You're right. Okay, so it's 1980. I moved here. I was able to start working. A lot of stuff happened in 1982. I actually, because of the Babies and my affiliation with Ricky Phillips, I got to do a John Waite record in Manhattan in 1982. I was 23 years old, and Neil Giraldo produced it. So I got to work for Neil Giraldo. He was a great guitar player, and I got to do John Waite's record. And I was in Manhattan, and I met John Bon Jovi, who was living in the apartment above the power station, whom his uncle owned and ran, Tony Bon Jovi. And all at once, I did demos with John Bon Jovi. I did John Waite's record. And then I came back to LA, and I got the gig with Rick Springfield. Rick, I'd been snuck into the studio and done a couple of overdubs on Rick Springfield's second record. Not his second record. Well, he had the record with Jesse's Girl, and then he was quickly doing another record right after that to back it up. And so he was really big, and the song was really big. And he let go of his band and hired a new band. And because I had done some overdubs on the record, I knew the kind of animal that I was supposed to be. And what that was is I went into the rehearsal with a pair of 100-watt Marshalls and played really loud, simple, aggressive rock. Because in his heart, Rick is, his stage show is The Who. It's basically just The Who. And maybe other earlier British bands, but it's loud and simple and rock. And I did that. And so I got that gig. So all these 3 things happened. I played on Bon Jovi, what ended up being his first record and his first single, Runaway. I did this John Waite record called Ignition that had some really great stuff on it. And then I got Rick's gig. So
and Neil Giraldo also had played with Rick, right? I thought on the first album. right?
Well, here's what Neil Giraldo did. When Keith Olsen was recording Jesse's Girl, he put together a band, and it was, I think Myron played drums. No, well, who played drums? It might have been Myron. It might have been Mike Baird. Anyway, Neil Giraldo was the guitar player on that song, but he was also the bass player because the bass player never materialized that day. It was the day. Right. It was, and the bass player is a friend of mine, and his name will go unmentioned. But he was partying the night before, and it just didn't make it.
Didn't
so
work
Neil ended up overdubbing the bass.
Whoops.
Yeah. Wow. Day to miss.
Water under the bridge.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's super cool. So John Waite, and then Bon Jovi, The Runaway. So tell us about that. So did you do all the guitar parts on that?
I did end up doing all the guitar parts on that particular song. There's some debate about that on the internet, which I have it doesn't mean anything to me. People can say whatever they want, but I did Aldo Nova actually, and I tracked the song. But when we did overdubs, I ended up doing all the rhythms and leads on that song.
Yeah.
So Richie wasn't around at that point. It was just
no. The thing is, John was just doing demos with Tony that Tony was paying for in a big studio and Roy Bittan played keyboards. It was a great band, from the E Street Band. And when it was time to put together a band, John actually came out here with David Bryan, and I took him to Casa Vega because they were trying to find musicians in LA to be in their band.
Oh shit.
And I think it was because the guys in his neighborhood, for some reason he didn't want to grab any of the guys in his neighborhood. But then they went back to New Jersey. I think he came to his senses, because I have to tell you, Richie Sambora was an integral, vital, important part of that. His voice and his guitar playing and his image. I mean,
yeah, that was an integral
it had
part
to be
of
him.
The songs.
Well, that's what. Yeah, the writing, the three of them.
The rest of the hits that after Runaway,
Yeah, he and Desmond Child and John Bon Jovi wrote all the great songs together.
Yeah. Well,
for sure.
It'll be cool to see him play with Bon Jovi, I think, at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I think they're supposed to do it. I'm not sure. Who knows? We'll see what happens.
And now our friends are the guitar players in Bon Jovi.
Yeah, Phil X and John Shanks. Yep. Yeah, I met John at NAMM as well. I believe he's going to be coming on the show at some point.
Yeah, good.
I think we're going to have him with Steve Lukather on the show.
Oh, that'll be excellent.
Because John wanted to go on with Steve. He wants to grill him and ask him questions.
That'll be just excellent.
Yeah,
Steve. Steve's on like a big tour right now.
It's going to be a minute, I think.
It'll be.
I talked to John on Sunday morning, and he was on his way to do some gigs, and seemed super happy. John, I'm lucky because John hires me to play guitar when he wants to not play guitar and just sit behind the desk. So I end up doing a lot of sessions for John. I have done over the years. It's nice. I love working for guitar players. I've worked for him. I've worked for Dan Huff. Like you said, in the old days, Neil Giraldo. Working for guitar players is a thrill.
Yeah, because they'll let you, come on, let's do some good stuff.
Well, and it just kind of puts you, you're just, I hate to say this, but you're really on your game, and I don't know, there's just, things happen really fast. They usually have a lot of great gear lying around, especially in John's case.
That's true too.
That's true. You ever do work? Did you ever do work with Brendan O'Brien at all?
I did once, and it was kind of late in the game. It was actually a couple of years ago, and really enjoyed it. He's very
fast.
Okay,
fast
well, here's the thing. He is a phenomenal guitar player.
Yeah,
I mean,
and a good drummer.
Well, okay.
You don't know.
I don't doubt it, but it's like
phenomenal musician in general.
I did a bunch of electric guitars, and we went to play acoustic, and I went out and played the acoustic, and I handed it to him, and he just nailed it. It was amazing.
Yeah,
but he's a great electric player too. It was.
He's an awesome individual. Yeah. I really love him. So now you also played on some Michael Jackson stuff, didn't you? Too.
Yeah, the way that worked, I had done Toy Matinee, and Bill Bottrell produced Toy Matinee, and which is one of the best records I've ever gotten to do. Anybody gets a chance, check it out.
That was a great record.
Yeah, prog rock.
I remember.
You know, really fun prog rock record with Pat Leonard and Kevin Gilbert, and so Bill went straight from that to producing 5 songs for Michael Jackson, one of which was Black or White. And Bill called me to come in and play. And you never know in a situation like that whether you're going to end up on the cutting room floor, as it were. And in fact, you don't know till the record comes out if they've kept your part, because the song morphs into all of these different incarnations over months and months and months. In that era, it did. They took forever to do stuff, and it would literally become a different song 3 times over as they changed it and perfected it. So what happened was he invited me in. My role was to do a heavy metal bridge in the middle of Black or White, and Michael was enamored with Dr. Love by Motley Crue at that point in time, because that was a big hit on the radio. And my job was to do that flavor in the bridge. And I was able to do it pretty quickly and easily. Michael came in. He was very respectful. He was dressed normally. His complexion looked normal. He looked me straight in the eye. It was a really pleasurable thing. But in that situation, you're in a cocoon. So you're in a studio that's very safe. And so it's just me and Bill Bottrell and the second engineer and Michael. Everybody's pretty relaxed in a situation like that. There's no, his guard was down. And so I did that part, and then I also had to do another part. I had to replace a guitar on another song that was played by another guitar player that I didn't get credit for. And that's another one of the jobs of a studio musician, is to do stuff that you don't get credit for. So I waited and waited and waited, and luckily I was able to stay on the song and not get erased. And you can hear the part in the bridge. The thing that happened was Slash got credit for playing on the song because on the prior record, Eddie Van Halen did that huge, appearance, and they, for marketing purposes, they wanted to have another hero guitar player. And the way that worked was Slash did the intro that came out of the Ghetto Blaster in the video, and Slash appeared with him on stage. But the actual guitar part, the main guitar part of the song, is Bill Bottrell, another great guitar player that I got to work for and with. And Bill also ended up doing the rap. He wrote and sang the rap, and he planned on replacing it, but Michael wouldn't let him. I think I played through a Bogner. There was a Bogner sitting there that I played through to get my part down. I think Bill had a Bogner sitting there. That's kind of the whole story.
That's cool. Do you remember what you used back in the day on Runaway?
Marshalls. The only thing back in the 80s, when you did a record, there were only 2 things. There were Fenders and Marshalls, really. I mean, Voxes, sure. But it seemed like all the records I did, you would bring your Marshalls, the producer would bring their Marshalls, you'd borrow other Marshalls, and you would just find the one that sounded the best and use it. And then if you needed a cleaner sound, you would use a cleaner Marshall. You needed a dirtier sound, you'd use a dirtier Marshall. So everything we used on Runaway, I used a BC Rich Mockingbird. I do remember that. That was kind of my Les Paul of the era. And I had a Schecter Stratocaster, and so that you can hear the Schecter Strat doing some of the harmonics.
The old school Schecter ones from the
it was very heavy, and it had
the pickups with the big pole pieces on it.
Had the brass pick guard.
Yep.
And then everything JCM 800s. Absolutely.
Right. And wasn't the Jesse's Girl thing, JCM 800, and I think you told me once, was it a boogie cabinet?
No, what happened was Neil Giraldo put together these custom Marshalls with JCM 800 heads and EVM 12L speakers.
Yes,
that was his sound.
Yep.
And that sound somehow worked great for us in the 80s. I don't know how that worked so
Marshall
good.
4x12 with EVM 12Ls?
No, it was a 2x12 open back. That was the rig. That was the rig on Jesse's Girl. And
I think it was a boogie cabinet, I think you told me.
No, it wasn't. They were custom cabinets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I later on the second tour I did Mesa Boogie cabinets. But
that was it.
The Neil Giraldo Marshalls, I think they were original Marshalls, maybe some sort of limited run.
Well, later, he had combos. I know that
exactly.
Neil had the old combos with EV12Ls. He still uses those to this day
That's what I'm talking about.
I've
what it was.
talked to him endlessly about that a few times, and wasn't it also a Boss chorus or something on some of that stuff, like a Boss?
I don't remember
or something?
that.
I thought you remember. I thought I remember you telling me that, but I don't know if that was. Maybe I'm not thinking right. But.
The thing is, when I moved here in 1980, the Boss chorus made its debut, and every guitar player all of a sudden had to buy a second amp and use a Boss chorus 100% of the time because it was that stereo effect.
Yep.
It was just amazing. There were not a lot of effects available back then.
No, not a lot at all.
Now, were any of the Marshalls that you had back then modded, or were they all just stock?
I started modding my Marshalls. Never had that much luck with them, but I went to all the guys. I even went to Jose and had him mod a Marshall. Trying to can't think of some of the other guys, but it was hard to get good modded Marshalls. They often sounded really bright and zingy. But yeah, you would try and try and find Marshalls that were higher gain Marshalls when you could, and there were modifications going on all the time. So yeah, the answer is yes. Yeah.
The Lee Jacksons and
that was it. I had Lee Jackson. Yeah, exactly.
Lee Jackson and the Jose's and the people of those were the two kingpins in LA at the time.
That was fun going to Jose's on Van Nuys Boulevard behind the vacuum.
Yeah, on Cedros Street at his house and his back little thing.
Yeah.
Wow. He had one of Eddie's guitars hanging on the wall. I went there in 1988, so this was like considerably after probably you went there.
Yeah.
And I had an amp done by him. So at that time when I was a 18-year-old kid here, and well, wait, we go back that far, don't we, Tim?
When did we actually meet? When did we meet?
That must have been 89 or something.
Yeah, that's how far we go back.
When you started doing your cartage stuff with Andy Browers, I think.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's how far we go back. So we go back quite a ways.
We do.
That's cool. That's really cool.
That seems like a different lifetime, but
it's actually 3 different lifetimes. It really is. It's like it's ridiculous how long ago it was. It doesn't seem like that long ago, but yeah.
So basically, your career snowballed, and so then you did the Rick Springfield gig, and then.
Yeah, okay. I can do this quickly.
After the Rick Springfield gig.
We'll
just fill this out the rest of the way.
So after Rick Springfield, that was 4 world tours and 5 records. He took time off, and I basically went broke. I started doing publishing demos, which I would go to songwriters' houses, and I would go to publishing company buildings on Sunset Boulevard and stuff, and I would get a fee, a really small fee to finish a song. And I would do 2 or 3 a day. And that's how I made my living for 2 years. The great thing about that was I learned in that 2-year period how to come up with parts and sounds quickly, which I wasn't very good at until that point. I had done some records, and I actually got to work with Kenny Loggins too, who was one of my heroes during that Rick Springfield era. But after that, the publishing demo thing, doing demos for people actually taught me to be a really, a decent provider of sounds and parts and rhythm guitar. I mean, Michael Thompson was already really great at it. Lukather was already really great at it. Huff was already really great at it. But it took me a while to get some of those skills together. So I was actually thankful for that. And then around 1990, when I did Toy Matinee with Pat Leonard, that was the moment when I started getting record dates regularly. And that continued for... it has continued forever. It's different now, only because in the 90s and the early 2000s, you would do records and they would end up on the radio. You would hear the stuff on the radio.
Yeah.
And in this particular era, for me, I work with a lot of great people, but it doesn't always. You don't know that it's actually going to end up on the radio. But most of my credits started in 1990. And I got to play with all my heroes, Peter Cetera, Tina Turner. You'd have to look at the website to see all the people I got to play with. Yeah, but that was even later. That was 1997.
Much later. Yeah, but you did Iris, right?
Yeah, and that was my first session with Rob Cavallo, and it was this magical thing that happened.
That was a magical song for them.
What's that?
That was like the modern day reinvention of the Goo Goo Dolls. You know, that was that whole that song and everything. That was such a crazy hit song.
Yeah.
I mean,
I got to do that because Dean Parks, they asked him to do it the night before, but he was burned because he'd been on a session all day. And so the second engineer called me. It might have been Rafa Sardina. He had them call me, and they wanted a mandolin. And I said to myself, I am not walking into this rock session with a mandolin. So I actually brought my rig, my electric rig. And I found out later that they were kind of pissed at me for that. But there was no way I was going to walk into that session with a mandolin. And it worked for me because I was able to do the slide solo and do an electric part. And then I worked with Rob Cavallo, that producer, ever since. And he's been the biggest and most loyal record producer of my entire career. So it's just, that
was a good opportunity in the right place at the right time. And and I like what you did. It's like, well, I'm going to do more. I'm bringing this.
Well, I just didn't want to picture myself walking in with this little teeny case,
Yeah.
I'm not that guy. No.
Yeah. Now Dean would have come in with the mandolin that they asked him to do.
Well, and
he would have done it great.
Yeah. And I'm so
because
happy that
Dean is a fantastic, great guy.
Plays anything. He gets better all the time too.
Yeah, he's crazy.
Better all the time.
I didn't see him this year at NAMM. Normally I see him at NAMM.
I've seen him recently. I've talked to him recently. Yeah, he's doing great.
Every so often I do pedal board work for him and stuff, and I just haven't seen him in a little while.
Yeah, he's doing great. He works a lot. He's happy. He's got a home studio that he loves.
Yeah.
And he's buying vintage guitars. He bought a Les Paul SG that's amazing from Chicago Music Exchange.
Maybe I saw that.
Yeah, maybe you did. Yeah,
I think I remember him coming in here with one.
Yeah.
Not that long ago.
God, I see how you guys. I mean, we all know so much. We have so much history. We know so many of the same people that it's just endless.
Yeah, right.
It's just endless.
So, how about some stories? How about some stuff that people don't know you played on?
I don't know. I mean, that's
over the years, like some.
Oh, okay. So
bigger things that people might not know that you played on.
Probably the greatest example of that is Shinedown, and that was with Rob Cavallo. They were at a point in their, I think it was around 2008. They were at a point in their. I may have the year wrong. I mean, I want to think something was 5 years ago, and it was really 10 years ago.
Yeah, so, exactly. I know. I really know.
But it was Shinedown. They were at a point where the guitar player in the band was having some trouble, and so I came in, and on that record, I ended up doing all the guitars. And it was a situation where then on the next record, I ended up doing almost all the guitars. And it was a situation where they couldn't really reveal that. And I was really proud of those records. I love the band. I love the guys in the band. And I love Brent singing. He's a phenomenal rock singer. I was really, really proud of. It was The Sound of Madness. And then the record after that might have been called Bully, but that was the single from the record. But I actually got to do, I've never looked like a rock guy really, but I kind of am a rock guy inside. And it was just great to be the guitar player in a rock band at that level with a singer that good, really great. Right.
No, he was a great singer. I did something for one of the guitar players, I think at some point in time. Some sort of switcher or something. I don't really remember.
They do well out there. They tour constantly, and I love them. They're great.
Right. There's got to be a few other ones too, didn't you? A few other ones over the years that you did through the 90s, or.
I that's going to be a hard thing for me to think of, unless I would have to kind of look at my discography, which I'm kind of not prepared to do.
Well, I've got a little bit in front of me. What did you do with Ozzy Osbourne? Just curious.
Okay, that
Yeah, we'll quiz you.
I don't think that's a. I don't honestly don't think that's. It's either not a real credit, or it's either a mistake, or it's something I did with Bob Marlette. Do you know Bob Marlette?
Yeah, I do.
I did so much work with Bob Marlette that we could have done an Ozzy song easily. Or I'm wondering if it was for a while Rob Cavallo was doing a lot of movie songs where we would do the song and they would add the I did a Kiss song where I played the guitars on a Kiss song and they added the vocals afterwards. So I guess there are a lot of situations where you do ghost behind artists that I've just even forgotten. There was a period where we would, with Rob Cavallo, where they would send us, Atlantic Records would send us song after song by artist after artist, and we would literally re-record the music underneath, and then they would release it. And so, and some of these bands, they had recognizable names. A lot of them. I mean, like, I did a really great single with a band called Uncle Cracker, and they were there. I loved those guys, but I'm not really prepared right now with names.
It's okay.
I would have had to prepare for this.
No worries.
But we did a lot of ghosting.
Well, the funny thing is, I remember talking to not that long ago. Well, actually, maybe it was like 10 years ago, for all I know. Not that long ago, could be 10 years. Josh Freeze, he goes, "Yeah, I'm the most hated drummer ever." I go, "What do you mean?" Because every drummer hates me because I'm the guy who replaces his parts.
Well, yeah, the drum chair was traditionally where that would happen the most.
And sometimes at night, unbeknownst to the band, late producer calls him and just come in and fix this, and he plays it, and then sometimes the band member thinks he played it or they edited it. So he goes, "So I'm hated." and then he goes, and then the producers started threatening the band with calling me. So,
like, if you don't get it right, we're going to call Josh.
Right, we're going to call Josh.
Yeah.
And Josh is like, "Really?"
Oh, that's great.
So anyway,
that's
funny.
I mean, he's played probably, on a long discography like you do, like you have, Tim, and it was just funny.
Even more records. I have had the experience of being there with the guitar player that I'm replacing, and it's never easy. You can kind of become friends, but it's just so hard for both parties.
Yeah, it's got to be tough.
So hard for both parties.
Yeah, it's like, "Do you mind if I screw your wife?"
It really is like that. Yeah, and then it's sanctioned by everybody in the room. And it's approved by the lead singer and the manager and everybody, but that's, it's wrong.
Yeah. And meanwhile, the guy's like, "No, it's not okay."
Yeah.
That's funny. Hey, one of the questions here is, and I don't know the answer to this, did you do parts? This is from JVin248. Tim, did you do parts on Bon Jovi's Slippery When Wet?
No. The thing is, the stuff I did with John was before he had his record deal. It was funded by his uncle, and we did like 6 or 8 songs. One of those songs ended up being Runaway, and it's the only song on his first album that wasn't his new band. So I did one song with him on the first record that was his first single, and then everything else since then was his band. So the cool thing was 10 years later, I was walking down the hall at A&M, which is now Henson, at a studio, and he passed me and said, "Hey, I need you to play a solo on this Christmas song." And so I went in and played on a Christmas song, and I still hear it every Christmas, and it's one of the best solos I've ever done on a record. It's turned out so good. I forget the name of it. There Will Be Christmas or something. It's really good. It's really good. It's got a really long solo on the vamp. And still proud of it to this day. That was 10 years later. Yeah,
I got to say, the Runaway song that you did on the first record too, the solo on that and stuff. No, it's a very memorable part.
Thank you.
You can hum that in your head to this day, and I'm not like the most massive Bon Jovi fan either, but still to this day, that song in particular stood out as being. I actually really like that song. I thought that was a great song.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And the part I can think of the solo right now in my head.
Yeah.
So to me that means great.
Good. Thanks.
That means greatness. It's like when a song. I often say this to people when the classic songs that you grew up with, songs by whoever, the Who, let's say, or something. You can remember every little part of it. It's not just the vocal hook. You remember the chorus. It's the guitar part, the opening guitar part. The opening keyboard part in Bob O'Reilly. If you hear that, just the first little bit of it, you're like, that's Bob O'Reilly. There's every aspect of that song was a hook. Guitars, keyboard parts. And that made up a fantastic song. And I just sometimes don't think songs these days are quite crafted the same way.
Well, they're not. People don't take as much time. People don't bleed for them as much.
Bleed for them is that's a great saying. Exactly.
And frankly, they can't afford to sometimes because people have to move so fast because they have limited budgets and stuff. But it's true. Rock is a great idea. It's like simple, great ideas just chained together, and the simplicity is kind of shocking sometimes. I think of All Right Now and how simple and great that is.
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely. And right now, as you say that, I hear the guitar part.
Yeah, right.
In my head.
Yeah.
And that's the thing you don't always get these days. You don't get where every part of the song is such an identifiable part. And that someone accused me of this before, of that I sound old about this.
But there's been a few of those.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm not going to back that. I still think a great song is a great song, and I just don't think there's as much time spent on the song craft as there used to be.
It's true, and the vetting process is not as ruthless, and that makes for a lot of stuff that's almost there.
Yeah, and I kind of think also in society today too. I don't know if we have the attention span, to write those songs. I think you're going to get distracted on your Facebook, on your phone, while you're writing your song.
True. Yeah.
I mean,
plus there were such great producers back then too that helped shape.
Well, great engineers, great producers, great musicians. It was interesting. Did you see the Quincy Jones? Have you worked with Quincy Jones before?
Never, and I do want to see that thing. I'm curious about it.
Did you see the little interview he did?
No, not yet.
Oh,
yeah.
That was
he apologized just recently for it.
Well, I don't. You know what? Here's my take on that. I think at this point in his life, I think he's like I loved that interview because it was kind of a no punches pulled,
There was some parts I loved it, but the Beatles stuff, I think he went a little far.
Well, his idea of music, he has a different aesthetic, so I forgive him that.
Okay,
I mean, he's wrong. He's wrong about that, but it's just from his point of view, music is something different than that. So
from his point of view, at the time when they first started, that's how I deemed it. At the time when they first started, they couldn't play their instrument as well as he thought they should.
Or do you think it was just
that they wrote amazing songs? But I think I love the fact that his interview was pretty no holds bar. It's just like I'm this age and I don't give a fuck about what I'm saying now.
I love that.
And I saw another interview he just did with that going to say this wrong because I don't really know him. There's a like an R&B artist or something, Khalid or
I'd be Khalid, Kalhid.
Yeah, something. Yeah. And he did an interview with him where he was sitting down with him on video, and he was talking with Quincy, and they were going back and forth too in this video, and it was for, I forgot what it was for, Us or something. I don't remember what it was for, and that was a really cool interview. Also, I mean, this man is royalty, kind of, you know. I mean, you can't deny his success.
His body of work is amazing.
His body of work is crazy, and the success. And I mean, they even brought up, you know, in one of the articles, one of the two, they brought up Michael Jackson, and it's like, what do you think about Michael and his change and his thing? And he's like, I gave him shit. Basically, he said, I gave him shit for that all the time. I'm paraphrasing. This is like, what are you doing? What the hell? What the fuck are you doing? You know, and
yeah, he was pretty truthful and forthright about that.
He was pretty truthful and forthright, and man, it was very refreshing to see, to me, because I think you know, he lived through several eras of this music industry, and him being kind of the king of it. It was interesting. If you haven't seen some of these, you should watch them. They're great.
Yeah, I want to. I've just been too busy.
Yeah, read or watch them. I think it was interesting. It was.
Yeah.
I'd like to sit down with him. That would be a fun discussion.
Hey, we got a quick question. Matt Harrison wants to know, Mark, do I need to email tonetalk@gmail.com to buy a shirt? Actually, email tonetalkmark, MARC, @gmail.com, and we've got shirts in stock. All right, so email me. The email address is also on the YouTube website, so just check it out and email me, and we've got shirts. What about Madonna, Tim?
That was a very quick one also. I had started working with Pat Leonard right after he produced Like a Virgin. So I missed most of that stuff. And, you know, the work I did with her was just a few sessions. And like most artists, she was very focused and disciplined. She was famous for not letting anybody have lunch because she thought it slowed everybody down. She wanted to work and get out of there. So that I kind of understand that. I just know from his work with her, I mean, he would write these beautiful pieces of music, and she would come in and basically sing 2 takes, and that was it. She was, you know, she did her stuff really, really quickly. And just the combination, you know, he ended up, I think, writing and producing 35 Madonna songs, and it was fun to watch him get paid for that.
Yeah, right.
And fun to be part of his, you know, his musical life. But I came along a little too late to work much on her records. Like a Virgin, I think, was the last full record he produced, and I met him 1 minute after that. Basically, right. I went to the rap party for that record.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. And Springsteen, that's another name I see.
Yeah, that was amazing. I started working with Roy Bittan a lot. He would bring me into tons of sessions that he was doing down at A&M, you know, like Stevie Nicks and Patti Smythe and all of these great people I got to play on these records. And there was a certain point where it was just that moment when Bruce wanted to get away from the E Street Band. And I was working with Roy a lot, and he ushered me in. And Bruce was incredible. I mean, you know, you go into a situation like that, and you know that you're capable of playing the music. And I'm going to I did a Don Henley record, and it was the same experience. You know that you can play the E chord that's required, and the A chord, and the B chord, and whatever. But what's incredibly difficult and treacherous is stylistically, those artists are looking for something It doesn't go, and even Bruce explained it to me when we were working. It can't go a little too much this way or a little too much that way. Maybe it has to be Motown, but you can't recognize it as Motown. And then maybe it has to sort of lean over to Creedence Clearwater, but it can't sound like Creedence. I mean, they're very, very careful about how they surround their art with noises and guitar noises and drum noises and stuff. So you don't, like in Springsteen's case, it was a total success. I got to do, a fair amount of work on, I think the record was called Human Touch. But in the case of Don Henley, I was so excited to go in there because I thought, okay, he's finally found his guitar player, and it's me.
Oh boy.
It was not me.
Yeah.
It was, I barely ended up with one hardly discernible part on one song.
Huh.
And that's nobody's fault. It's just this, as these people are bleeding to death for great songs and great music and great records, everybody, we all get wounded and have to go, get our wounds repaired and move on. It's
Right.
not, but it's all in the service of something great. It really is. Springsteen, a lovely human being. I ended up playing after that. I ended up playing on his wife's record because of that. And that was a situation where they had his house in Beverly Hills, and they had the house next door, and the house next door was the studio. And he and his wife, Patty Scalfa, they would walk through the yard into the connecting gate, and yeah, it was great. They're really, really nice people, wonderful people.
Super cool. And what about Clapton? You mentioned Clapton before as being an influence, and then did you end up working with him?
That's a credit. Okay, so this will lead to another good story.
Okay.
I've played rhythm guitar on 4 Santana records, including the most recent one, I think. And I have never met Carlos Santana. So in the case of that Eric Clapton record, that's what I was mentioning earlier. There was a point where Rob Cavallo was doing movie songs because the Iris was a movie song. And so it was the soundtrack, they would collect all these songs, and there was big budgets to make songs for movies. I did a lot of that with Trevor Horn too. And the Clapton song was done without him. I think he may have showed up the day after I finished my part. But that's pretty, like I said, somewhat common. In Santana's case, the records that I worked on were all done down here by producers. And then he gets delivered, the music, he makes comments, he makes changes, and then he overdubs on it. So I did not meet Eric Clapton. I have not met Carlos Santana, but I've done like 30 Santana songs, rhythm guitars like crazy on Santana records.
That's sort of like how Mike Landau has worked a ton with BB King on BB King records.
Yeah. Right.
And he had played all the rhythm stuff because BB doesn't play rhythm.
Right.
And on a ton of records, I remember back in the day him going to sessions with him and doing that. So just like no one really knows, but
well, I defend these guys because once you've been making records for a while, and especially if you become that big, you don't really always want to participate in the drudgery of putting parts together. He'd rather be. These are busy people, and they would rather be doing something else most of the time, and then just approving or approving the work that gets delivered to them. And I totally understand that. Totally.
So going back to the Michael Jackson thing. So you said he was there. So what was he like to work with?
What's that now?
What was he like to work with?
Well, I think I mentioned I was prepared for.
I hear he's great to work with.
Well, if you watch the movie, This Is It, you can see. I mean, it'll put tears in your eyes how great he was to work with.
Yeah.
At the same time, he was a very, very ruthless businessman. I have, he if you crossed him in business, he would stand up for himself quickly. But in that situation, I was prepared for something very awkward, but it was the opposite of that. So I'm in the studio. I've done my part. They bring Michael in. He gets really excited about my pedal board. and we start talking about my pedal board, and he starts telling me how much he remarks at how much I, Tim, must love my pedal board and the sounds I get from it. And I say, yeah, it's really, really great. He was dressed like a college kid. He was in jeans and a sweater and a collared shirt, and his complexion looked completely normal. He looked me straight in the eye the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
It could not have been easier, nicer, more normal.
I've had a couple people that have worked with him also in the past, and even on the very last thing before he died, on that tour he was going to start to do. And he said what was amazing about him was he would come in, he doesn't play an instrument, but he could hum every instrument's part musically and vocally show you all the parts that he wanted the song to be.
It's true.
And
it's true.
Every little bit of it,
Yeah.
every last little note of how he envisioned it, which was I found very interesting.
The original demos for songs like Billie Jean were him doing every instrument on his vocals.
Mm-hmm.
I never heard those demos, but I heard about them.
Oh my God,
so it's real. Would that be amazing?
Yeah, someone should bring that out. That would be amazing to hear.
Yeah, I hope
there are demos. There are demos of like I actually have it where it's just him vocally doing God, I forget the songs. I have it on my
although he didn't play an instrument, he knew exactly all the instrument parts and what it should be. The composition in his head was there. And
then Quincy Jones. I have a friend, Mike Boddicker, who played on those records, and Quincy Jones and Jerry Hay did all the string arrangements, which is amazing. They're all amazing. Horns too, but were there horns on Michael Jackson records? Maybe it was just strings. Anyway, Mike Boddicker said that Quincy would hire 3 arrangers. He would pay, hefty fees to 3 different arrangers, and the 3 arrangers would write all the parts also that they thought were great. So he would take all Michael's parts, and he would take the parts from the brilliant minds of 3 different arrangers and just pick and choose the elements that he wanted.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Craftsman.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I have the Off the Wall album, and it's an extended version which has Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, which is the original demo recording.
Oh, cool.
And Working Day and Night. And it has, both of them are a lot of vocals, which just like him doing the drum beat and the whatever.
Yeah,
it's pretty
there you
wild.
go then.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. So it was, let's get to Stelios questions, because Stelios sent me Stelios Calisperides, and I'm not sure where he lives. He lives in London. So he has a lot of questions for you, Tim. So if you don't mind me asking, this is more gear related, and then we'll get back to some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
He wants to know, what speaker and mic configuration do you use for recording when you're switching between amps?
I mainly have one speaker cabinet set up, and it's a VHT 4x12. It's customized. The bottom half is closed back and the top half is open back. And in that cabinet are vintage 30s. I have different microphones in front of the cabinet that I'll use at different times. There's a 57, there's a Royer 122V, which is their tube version of their 121. It's just got a little more buttery thing to it. It's pretty great. Then I have a Sony C800, which is not the one you see all the time. It's a amp. Yeah, it's a microphone that they released when they first released their C800G, and it doesn't have the heatsink on it. So it's this black mic, and that sounds really good too. Doug McKean uses that mic, the Cavallo's engineer, and that grew out of Doug McKean recorded American Idiot by Green Day, and he used C37A Sonys, and the C800 is the modern version of the C37A. Anyway, back to the rig. So it's a VHT cabinet, 412. And then my mic pre these days that I like the best is BAE 1073. Mark Lohman, I have compared these 1073s to the real ones, They sound identical, except they have more open and better top end. So I'm in love with these mic pre's.
Yeah, it's a great mic pre. I think didn't Avedis have something to do with that mic pre?
Oh, I don't know, but yeah,
Avedis was their designer that does most of their stuff, and I think he had something to do with that and why it's.
Yeah, I know who he is, but I did. Yeah, I did. You would know more about that than.
Yeah.
Now, did I answer the whole question? Was there more to it than that?
VHT Vintage 30s mic pre, the BAE 1073.
Yeah. Okay, good.
And various amps.
Yeah, and then he wanted to know if you have a favorite amp and or a guitar that you use most for most sessions.
Well, yeah, the amp that I use mostly, and I don't know if this is it might just be laziness, but it always sounds like the right platform for putting pedals on top of it. It's Frederick's divided by 13 RSA 23. I know Lyle Workman really likes this amp too. I think it was designed by Frederick and Rusty Anderson. And I have used this with so many people in the room that I've sold probably close to 50 of these for Frederick, just from people being in the room with me when I use it. There's nothing, it's very simple, but it kind of sounds like a cross between a Fender and a Vox. And I get a basic sound on it, and then I push it with pedals. And usually here at home, I use an MXR micro amp, but it's the updated version that Bob Bradshaw designed. I have it right in front of me. It's the CAE Boost. So it's a very inexpensive version of the micro amp. That is what lost internet for a second, just came back.
Yep.
That's what I use when I want to do a power chord. I'm one of those guys at this point who kind of feels like the amp doesn't matter so much, as long as you get a really warm kind of sweet spot distorted sound, and then you just play with it to get all your other sounds, play with the different guitars, the volumes on the guitar, compressor, delays. I mean, of course, you can't, for high gain stuff, you have to go to something different. But I tend to use an amp as a basic platform.
Yeah, but you still have your Marshalls and your
absolutely
Diesel and your and depending
Naylor Super Drive
your Nailer, that was for years.
Yeah.
Depending on what the sound calls for and what you're doing, right?
And Cliff Jones gets mad at me over at LA Vintage Gear because he wants to sell me a 2-Rock, and I would love to own a 2-Rock. I would love to own a Benson. I would love to own one of those new Parks, but I feel like I have the tones. I mean, I'm a little different. I mean, I used to search for tones to the point of not sleeping, but now I feel like I get the tones I want every time I pick up a guitar, and it's just a different philosophy. It's just
just like I've loaned you the Dirty Shirley amp, and you go, "It's great," but I have all these amps, and it's fine. I'm good, and that's okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, that's no problem. And I always sort of said with clients of mine over the years, it's like if you're going to have 4 or 5 amps, it was so you need your sort of blackface Fendery sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
You need your Vox.
Yeah.
You need your Plexi Marshall, and then you need one high gain thing.
Dave, you're absolutely right.
If you had 4 amps, those would be the 4 amps to have.
Yeah.
If you could only have 4 and you had no other choices, on a desert island, it would be the blackface Fender, and I say of some sort, meaning there's a lot of good ones, Super Reverbs, Vibroluxes. They're very similar, actually. But then your Vox, of course, you need your Vox.
Yeah.
And you need the Marshall tone, the Plexi Marshall tone. To me, that's the Grail kind of thing. And then higher gain thing if you need that kind of texture.
Absolutely.
And
I agree.
You could do it with 4 amps. If you chose those 4 amps, and that way you'd have everything you'd ever need.
Yeah, for a lifetime. You really could. And a lot of guitar players want to keep searching and never want to be satisfied. But at a certain point, if you're going to make music, you have to stop searching and start, just.
I will throw a high watt in as a mention there too. That's kind of a whole different thing to me.
Yeah.
Would you agree? You have a high watt, don't you?
I would. They distort in a very open and uncompressed way, which is great.
Punchy.
And they also take pedal, like a high watt 100 is the best clean platform for fuzz pedals in existence.
Yeah.
So you're right. They're just wide open valve.
Speaking of fuzz pedals, I want to give you a fuzz pedal.
Good. Okay, great. Cool.
Because I think you'll really like our Fuzzfeed pedal. I think you'll really find that interesting. So come by and get one.
Okay, I will.
I have one here for you. Yeah, but you used the nailer for years.
Yeah, I was a bit of an odd
for years
and years. It's the way it distorts is so smooth. It was really a great way for me to play distorted guitar on records. For lack of a better word, I mean it's like I hate using this phrase, but it was a radio friendly kind of distorted guitar sound.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just really smooth and creamy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
that's what it does.
So, I was kind of an oddball in that I relied on it. And then the clean channel was great too. Oddly enough, the clean channel can sound very Fendery in my SuperDrive 60. So I was able to use it as my primary amp for a long time in the 90s.
Hey, do you still have my blue Vox?
I do. I love that amp. I searched for an A+ Vox, and I would buy them and on eBay, and then it would be a C- Vox, and then I
never found it.
Buy another one, and then I buy 50s from. I bought and bought and bought Voxes. That's the only Vox I ever bought that was A+ and sounds like it's supposed to.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
If you ever feel like getting rid of that, I would be interested in buying it back.
Well, I will tell you this: if I do, it'll go to you and you only, because that's a rare thing, isn't it? When you can kind of, put your fishing rod into the lake and pull out something,
right? Pull it back out. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So what kind of Vox was it?
Let me just put that out there. If you ever sell that, I want it back.
No, that's true. I think I instinctively would have offered it to you anyway, but it's an AC30 to answer your question. And did you do the top boost mod?
No, it was an AC30. I do not think it was original blue. I think it was someone Retolexed it at some point. But it was a blue AC30 copper top amp that had a added on top boost by Mark Sampson.
Oh, he did it. Oh,
he did the added on top boost on it. So,
that's why it sounds so good.
So, it was a really good one.
It's a really good one. Still is.
And I fondly remember that amp.
Yeah.
And I kind of kicked myself for selling it to you.
Yeah, we all.
Maybe I'll get it back one day. You never know.
Yeah, you might.
I doubt it.
You never know.
Jim, you need to put that in your will now.
No, now you got me thinking. I'll be thinking about it. I'll try and make it happen for you.
Oh no, you don't have to do that. I mean, like if you want the amp, keep the amp, but you can put it in your will.
That is, yeah, okay, I will.
For a small fee.
I also remember a 50-watt Marshall you had that had a replacement output transformer. I don't know if you still have it.
Yeah, that's long gone.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That was a good amp, though.
Yeah, it was good. I've owned, I don't know, probably 40 or 50 Marshalls in my life.
Yeah,
I really have. Marshalls were the holy grail to me.
What have you gravitated towards now? What have you landed on that you're stuck with?
Well, I have 4 Marshalls now. I have 2 Plexi 69s with lay down transformers.
Oh, great!
And they are great. They're both clean amps. Neither one of them is. They're both very clean. And then I have a pair of JCM 800s that I don't use anymore, and I use one of them for a speaker stand.
Well, you know, hey.
Yeah.
That's fun.
But
You know,
the Marshall, huh?
You know what's funny about that? That you say that is, you know, when back in 1988 or something, you know, around that time frame, you viewed a JCM 800 as a kind of just like a junky piece of junk, kind of, compared to the older amps.
Right, exactly.
And it's funny that over the years, now that these have become more holy grail amps, but at the time they were known to have a little bit kind of crappy transformers and not the greatest amp in the world.
Well, you're gonna remember the story because I researched. I had to do a Renaissance repurchase of a JCM 800 at one point, and I bought the wrong one. And from 1982
side by side inputs,
because of cost cutting, they basically robbed the amp of its good components for like how long? 4 years, 6 years?
Well, I don't know if they robbed it of the good components. It was just like it was the same circuit. It was just a slightly different take. Little different filtering scheme, a little bit different how they put it together. It was still sort of the same amp, but
it was cost.
But you know what?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, it was cost cutting, but you know what? There are still some gems.
Wow.
In the two side by side input ones. I've heard some where I'm just like going, oh, well, okay, that one sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay.
If Marshalls were always like that anyway, it was mercurial because they always, like a lot of them didn't sound that great, and then occasionally one would sound amazing, and you go, why is this so different every time?
Right. And you had to go through a bunch of them to find the good one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was on the search for a JCM 800, I think I bought a 2204. I think it was the vertical inputs.
The right one. Yep.
Yeah. And so that was the one that I was told to buy. And so I went looking, and I went to 30th Street Music in New York. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it. The great place where they've got vintage gear. And they had a room in the back, and they must have had 3 or 4 of the different JCM 800s. And I just went plugging into each one and finally landed on the one I was like, okay, yeah, this one sounds the best one to me. And I bought that one. I ended up selling it, don't have it anymore. Yeah. But I, you know, they were vastly different from what I remember.
Yeah.
So, well, that's cool. All right.
Well, it's just like guitars. I mean, there's some guitars that you pick it up and you're just like, oh yeah, that's the one.
It's true. Yeah.
You know, I have that problem. I said I didn't show Mark, but I showed Tim earlier before we were on camera, right? So I have a new guitar of mine.
Nice.
So it's a new Friedman guitar. I know it's hard to see on this damn camera, but it's funny. I'm not really into Sunburst that much personally, but this particular guitar just spoke to me, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm taking that home."
well,
that's one of our new guitars. It was one of our new guitars that came in, and unfortunately, or fortunately, I get to see all of them before they go out. And man, seeing all of them before they go out, that's fun.
Tempting.
Because you're like, oh, that one's really cool. And then I literally was doing a photo shoot yesterday for some products that we had, and I'm going to put a guitar just propped in the photo shoot. So I go to our guitar manager and I go, okay, give me one of those Sunburst ones that just came in, because there was like 3 of them that we had that came in. And so we open up the first one. I'm like, no, not that one. I look at another one and I'm like, oh yeah, that one looks cool. The Sunburst just was a little different, you know?
Yeah.
And he gave it to me and I go, oh, you might not get this back. and then we put it in the photo shoot, and I was while the photographer was shooting the gear, I'm sitting there playing the guitar. And I'm like going, okay, that's mine. And that's happened with all the ones I own. Personally, I own 3 of my own guitars now. Only 3. I don't, it's not crazy.
That's pretty good.
Well,
it soon will be 4. I have to own 1 of every model.
I mean, it's different for you because that's something that you're making, but it's in a way it's the same, because if you find a guitar that you feel that way about it, you have 2 choices: you buy it or you lose it forever.
Yes, exactly.
And you have to say to yourself, do I want to lose this forever? Because that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You will never repeat this.
Tim, I should have you down to the factory and you should like go through all the guitars.
Find one that I can't live without. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, they're made by
sure
Grover Jackson.
there'll be a magical one that you'll be like, oh.
The one you have in your hand. I love Sunburst and I love distressed relic guitars. So I know you're not going to sell that one.
You know what? People get crazy about the distressed relic thing, and here's how I feel about that. I feel, 1, you don't have to worry about the guitar anymore. I like that.
I do too.
2, what I like about it, and people will argue this to no end, is that I have found over the years that less finish, the more stuff off the guitar,
absolutely,
the better it sounds.
That's a good point. I never really thought of it that way. That's
and even on guitars I've owned over the years, and I said this in a video, and people were giving me shit for it. Over the years, even taking finishes off the back of a neck, I don't really like a sticky finish. I would rather have it be satin and nice and smooth, on the back of the neck. And taking a finish off the back of a neck changes the tone of the guitar. And people are like, bullshit. Okay, it's hard to prove, but I just really believe that, just like I have found over the years that the kind of finishes you use on guitars, even cabinets, makes a difference. Like if you have a guitar cabinet that has no Tolex on it, it sounds different than
it's going to resonate
cabinet
different
with Tolex on it. Think about it. Just put glue and vinyl on top of a resonating a speaker cabinet.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? Yeah. Well, it's going to sound different than a wood resonating cabinet.
Mm. And that's kind of the beauty of it. That's why everything turns out a little bit different. And
well, years ago, you had Tom Anderson. Like I remember,
still have those guitars.
You still have that guitar, right?
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is, they sounded great, but at that time, aesthetically, everybody was buying the fancy, wood finishes, and I just didn't want to go that direction. But it's true. The lighter the finish, I never really thought about that though. One of the advantages of having a relic guitar is it's going to have less finish on it. It's going to have some open spots. It's gotta help. Yeah, it's gotta help. Yeah.
And also, to me, it feels very worn in. It feels like it's been played for a long time. And okay, some people will say, well, you should just play it for the whole and wear it in. But
it'll take you 10 years, maybe.
Hey, if you want it to feel that way right away, what you're not going to wait 10 years for this, right?
Yeah, no, I loved relic instruments. I love them. I don't think twice about it.
You never have to worry about them
ever.
You can set it down on top of anything, on top of an amp or something, and just walk away, and you don't have to worry. And I'm going to scratch it. Well,
I heard Tom Anderson.
Hey, for everyone out there, we do make instruments that are not aged. So if you prefer it to be perfect, we can do that.
Good. I need to see all your guitars. It's been a while. I saw them at NAMM, just for a second, but I want to come see all your guitars.
If you want to come down to the factory one day,
I do.
That would be fun.
Yeah,
if you want to see
Pete and I can come down or something.
Sure. Yeah,
great.
That'd be fine.
Yeah,
you could sit there and look at all the guitars if you want.
Love it. Yeah.
You can't beat that.
I'd like your input on some of them if you want.
Absolutely. I have very specific ideas at this point. I really do.
That's fine.
And the thing is, I could be talking more right now, but I want to hang back and let you guys
Well,
ask
I'm
me
sure there's
stuff.
some questions now, so we probably should get to questions. We've ignored everyone for an hour and a half, and
Okay.
Let me get to one more question that Stelios had. Wanted to know about you using modelers and for recording or for live. Do you happen to use them? What do you use, and what are your thoughts about them?
I like the technology, and I've experimented with it. I use real amps 100% of the time. The Kemper, I take this Kemper on sessions now when I go work for like a television composer, because it sounds so good. I can just plug it in direct, and they just love the fact that we don't have to set up anything. And then I use my pedal board for sounds. I'll set it to one of my favorite Fender-y, just slightly distorted sounds, and I'll use pedals for it. I can still hear the inherent issues with the top end, and I can still hear the artificial nature of it. I did a Josh Groban record a few years ago, and I had just bought the Axe Effects, and I used it for everything. It was Cavallo again producing it, and he finally said, "Okay, you got to get rid of that thing." And I had used it for a couple of weeks and done a ton of recording with it that all sounded great. But Cavallo's a great guitar player too, and he's an amp purist. He owns 30 or 40 amps and 100 guitars, and very opinionated about gear. And he said, I just don't hear the air in it. And see, I love all of these devices, but they're a different animal. And when I'm at home, none of these devices equal the sound of a real amp. None of them do. And it particularly has to do with this thing that happens in the top end that's kind of pixelated and granulated and not sweet. The thing that works with these amps is, and so we get into a cultural, sociological thing. The way people hear music now, starting with the MP3 and even worse on YouTube, one of my theories about why rock is not popular is that distorted guitars suffer the most when you downgrade the bit rate and you have music that is delivered to the consumer at a reduced rate of fidelity. So on YouTube, where most people listen to music, a distorted guitar doesn't sound as good as it does on my Pro Tools rig or on a vinyl record. Distorted guitar in particular gets mangled as it gets reduced in quality as it goes to the end user and the consumer. So I've had like a guy like Matt Serletic, who's a really great producer. We've had talks about this. The reason the Kemper sounds modern in people's minds is because it sounds artificial, because that's what people are used to hearing on YouTube. And it's not a desirable thing. The top end is just, what's the word? It sounds like Kleenex or sandpaper. Grainy. Thank you.
Yeah, grainy. There you go.
Grainy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Like digital grainy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also very aware of the fact that if you are a person making amplifiers at great expense and selling them for a small profit, why should they be allowed to put your name in there?
Well,
it's a fine line. It's
the only company that can is UA, because they have official licensed Friedman profiles.
Yay.
Which do sound great, and that we worked with Brainworks on. And I don't know if have you ever tried any of those? Do you have
UA they're about to send me the OX system, but I tried. Harris Bernard sent me the previous thing, and I honestly couldn't get it past the starting gate because of the sound of. And I'm saying this because I'm an amp guy. I do 100% of my work with real amplifiers, and I kept trying to, I look at the image of the cool Fender amp and the microphone on my computer.
Did you try ours?
I heard that yours was really good, but I was so disenchanted.
You haven't tried.
I mean, I sent it back to them, and I thought he'd never speak to me again. But we're on good terms. He's going to send, the new thing's great.
The Ox is cool. Yeah, the Ox is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of the really cool things that came out of Summer Dam and then this Winter Dam.
But I'm 100% amps, 100% real amps. But taking this to a composer's house and having them go crazy over this device that they have, it's hard to believe, but a lot of guys I work with, it's still new to them. So
right.
Anyway.
That's cool. Yeah, it's as an app designer, it's a little bit depressing. You work hard for years to design your amplifiers and your sound or the sound you've created. And then everyone just buys an amp and creates a Kemper profile and returns the amp. How about that?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Return the amp or
that's just wrong.
Like recently Line 6 came out with our BE100. Well, they didn't use BE100, but they called it something else. But the profile, and it sounds good. It sounds good. But where does that, in the end, in the long run, where does this leave us? When the amp guys are gone, let's say, what is there left to model? I mean, you can model old amps and you can model used things and you can model all this, but there's no one designing new things anymore. It's done.
It's as bad as it is for you. We already went through that in the music business.
Yeah. Of course.
When we were talking about great ideas earlier in the show, I heard an interview with one guy who was really smart about this. He said songs were a lot better when there was a potential pot of gold on the other side of the E chord. Now, when you write that song, there's no pot of gold on the other side of it. When there was, you had a whole different energy writing that song. Those of us in the music business, we had to adapt. It happened in stages, but the value of music, was reduced. And the answer is actually in the way you're living your life. You have adapted, and we have adapted. I have adapted. I have my whole social media thing and my masterclass that is monetized was me looking at the next 20 years and going, okay, things are changing. How do I want this to play out for me?
Sure.
As a studio musician, you're going to age out anyway. I mean, there's a point where this guy who looks like this, they want a guy who looks 25 to show up and have that energy and whatever. So it happens anyway. And then you become a different animal and you still work, but you got to share it with young guys coming up. But that would have happened anyway. But for me, the actual change in the music business where recorded music was not something that there were budgets for anymore in the same way, I had to make a decision to adapt and change. I don't think amp makers are going to go away. You would know more about that than I do because you know the exact numbers of what you spend and what you earn and what's being returned.
Ourselves as a company are doing well. I can't say that for some of my friends.
Right. But that's the new world, and it's the same way for everybody now. You have to have an ingenuity and you really have to adapt quickly, and you have to readapt all the time. Like with YouTube now, I have to actually keep refocusing the way I make YouTube videos just to keep my audience, because the algorithm changes and it gets more intense. You really can't. Not only do you have to change what you're doing, but you have to constantly change what you're doing. To stay on track. And that's what you're doing. And the people around you are smart, and you're changing and adapting. And unless you do that, you say to yourself, oh, well, I changed everything 2 years ago. Well, then you're obsolete because it keeps changing. And
right.
I mean, I
God.
talked to Tom Anderson at the show. He had the biggest year sales wise he's ever had.
Oh, that's great.
And I talked to Paul Reed Smith. We have a breakfast every NAMM. We get together for breakfast once, and he's doing amazingly well. I mean, he almost lost his business at a certain point during the downturn, but he's his footprint at NAMM is much smaller. He's got a leaner, much leaner operation there, but he's back ordered on his product. So it's.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not complaining either because I mean we're doing quite well, and we've worked hard though to.
And you have a team,
and we keep trying to make new products that everyone wants, and that's the thing. And in a diversified categories.
Exactly.
It's not just one category.
Yeah.
So, because I've been around as long as I have and done as much as I have, we can branch out in different categories and stuff. And maybe that's not accepted at first, but then after a while, it's like, oh yeah, those are great. When we first started doing guitars, it was like, why is he doing guitars? Well, I had a lot to do with, Don Grosh guitars when they were around. I had a lot to do, I was around high-end, guitars from Tom Anderson days and around all these kind of guitars, and people just didn't know the input I had on some things back a long time ago. And
it's something you already knew how to do, and you have a team. You have a great team. I know your team, and that's the other thing. You can't stay small in this day and age. You have to, you can't do everything yourself, and you can't stay small. You can't. No,
it's impossible. It's impossible to stay small because what happens with the small builders is they die because there's lack of capital or there's lack of funding. Even if they have great ideas or their products are fantastic, the biggest fault of any small business is a lack of capital. And capital and people to people to actually make the product or drive the product or produce the product.
When you were small.
I have one full-time employee and 4 part-time employees on my web business. And the full-time employee edits film. He just edits film 40 hours a week, mostly. And then I actually need more editing. I'm putting together more editing.
It's hard to find.
And so there's a spend on the business that is substantial, and it's every month. It's just a responsibility that you have to, if you want to do this and keep going, you have to do stuff like that. You have to look at everything. Being a musician now, you have to be an entrepreneur, and that's what we're doing. It makes me happy to adapt, but it's really scary that your adaptations have to be replaced by new adaptations very frequently.
Yeah,
it never ends. It never ends.
Never ends, man. Right?
Yep.
You got to work hard to get what you want.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, let's go to some of the chat. We got a question here from Blackie DH. And Tim, I don't know if you were around for this, but he says, asked him about the Sunset Strip in the 80s. Probably some good stories. Were you around for that? You mentioned Van Halen before.
Yeah, when I came here on vacation when I was 17, and it was such a classic story because we were walking down Sunset Boulevard looking for music. You come to LA, I want to hear some good music. And of course, you're not going to hear anything good usually. Mm-hmm. I walked past this doorway and I heard this guitar. And I just started smiling, and we just walked in, whatever. I'm going into this place where I hear this guitar. And it was Van Halen 2 years before their record deal, I think. 2 years before their record came out. They had just done some demos with Gene Simmons, which is a famous thing. But they were basically a top 40 band. They did a couple of originals. Eddie was hiding all of his tapping, which was kind of a pleasure because to see him just do traditional guitar playing for a whole night was pretty great. And to see him play LaGrange and Led Zeppelin songs and all this other stuff was pretty great. was all covers. David Lee Roth emceed a dance contest in the middle of the set. Eddie and Alex got into a fist fight at the end of the show on the stage in front of us. And then we went up and talked to Michael Anthony. It was really nice, and said they had just done these demos, or they were going to New York to do the demos with Gene Simmons or whatever, which was the precursor to them getting the record deal. But I was overjoyed. It was just, and his tone. He had the old Marshall from the church, and he had the Explorer that had been cut up, right, and whatever that thing was.
The Shark, yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. But so then I moved to LA, I think 4 years later, and LA was on fire. I mean, there was the Starwood, and then all the clubs on the Sunset Strip. And when I first moved here, I didn't want to spend money, so I would literally go and stand outside these places and listen to the music. It was like, this is how I'm gonna, learn to do this. I'm going to listen, because I didn't want to pay the cover charge, 5 times a night or whatever. Yeah. And I didn't have any money, so. But the thing for me was, I was never the guy. I never had the image to be in one of the bands. My roommate was playing with Greg Giuffria and Angel, and I had other friends who were in big rock bands and stuff. But I was more. Luckily, New Wave was a big force too, and I was more on that side of things. The stories, there were. I remember in the '80s, Rick. We played at the Universal Amphitheater for 5 nights in a row, and Rick got us each our own chauffeured limousines each night. And I was famous because I kept my limousine waiting out in front of. I ended up at the keyboard player in REO Speedwagon's house all night with a bunch of people, and I kept my driver in my limousine waiting until dawn, which was a very expensive bill for Rick to pay.
You're like, okay, well, yeah, I got a car.
Yeah, there were a lot of fun things. I mean, I have pictures in my photo album of a sea of girls carrying us.
Well, the
Rick to the bus
part alone had to be some. Yeah, you did how many tours?
Well, I did 4 tours with him.
4 tours. So
yeah,
so that alone has to be some epic stories.
Yeah, there were great things that happened for other people. I always made friends with women. So when you make friends with women, that's all that happens. So I wasn't really a player, but there were guys who really had stuff going on every single day in every city. It was pretty amazing. Yeah.
That was
certain crew members.
Mania with Rick at the time, right?
Yeah.
Like crazy.
It's fun to watch.
So, speaking of Rick, Joe Millo had a question. He says, "Thanks for bringing Tim on." Sure. He said, "Thanks for bringing Tim on the show. It would be great to know which 1 or 2 songs from your Rick Springfield days contain your favorite guitar work, and why you feel that way."
I think the entire record, "Living in Oz." There's, I think, 7 guitar solos on that record, and they were. I was intensely proud of each one. We crafted them together. We got great tones. Funnily enough, Rick just released a new record, and on his new record, I played more lead guitar on his new record than any record I've ever done with Rick. It's the record, something about a snake or something, or what? I forget what it's called. But if you get his brand new record, you can listen to it on Spotify. I play more lead guitar on that than even on Living in Oz. But to answer your question specifically, it's the Living in Oz record. Every song, those guitar solos, and even some of the rhythm guitars, were my best moments with him.
That's great. Okay. Now I know we had some other questions here, and let's see. Oh, did you use any load boxes? I know you mentioned you're getting the aux. Are there any load boxes or IRs that you particularly like?
I haven't done that yet. I mean, I really have to go back to the concept that because I do most of my work now in this studio, and like I did a record with Ann Wilson from Hart last week, who went down to the Village. Yeah, and it was the original producer Mike Flicker, and her band. Her guitar player is great. Loved him. I used amps for that. I use amps at home. I haven't entered that world yet. God, he's got a nice Fender amp sitting there. Wow. 2 nice Fender amps. I wonder who they belong to. So no, not yet.
He does. Yeah, let's look at that.
Yeah.
He's got a Super and a Vibra Lux, it looks like.
Yeah. So for me, it's still real amps all the way.
I gotcha.
I'm happy to me, the Kemper is like, I used to get one really good sound out of the Pod, and it was the kind of their matchless sound. And the Kemper is, just an amazing thing to carry into somebody else's, session for a quick thing. Right.
So John Sims has a question. Any Patti Smith stories?
You're talking about Patti Smythe.
Oh, Patti Smythe. Okay.
Yeah, she was the singer in Scandal, and I did a great record with her. But no, that's just professional musicians just making music. I hate to disappoint you, but yeah.
Julian CH, question for Tim. What's your favorite pedal for high gain?
I like the Dunlop EVH pedal. I carry that around with me. I really like it.
It's a good pedal.
I have to get you one of mine.
You're right. I would probably like it better. It's just like, you know what happens? It's just we're all so busy. I mean, I still do sessions almost every day, and then I have this. I'm making videos for YouTube and Instagram, and then for my website. We're all so busy that it's like we don't have time anymore to go check stuff out. I mean, you work, your office, you and Pete you're about 10 miles away from me.
Yeah, you can't get over here.
It's like modern
it's like
life.
What is that, like 3 hours away?
No, it's
actually,
about a half hour.
A couple miles away. Yeah, it could be 3 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's about a half hour.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Generally about a half hour.
Gotcha.
Hey Tim, I'm going to send you over a bunch of pedals. How's that?
Okay. All right.
There you
See,
go.
that's why my pass.
That
was my trick.
Show up.
Yeah, good.
You can just check them out.
Okay.
Yeah, because the BEOD has a special. Definitely, it sounds. It's different than the EVH 5150 pedal, but they both have similar flavors of high gain.
Sort of has a more high gain Marshall sort of character to it than the EVH pedal does.
I want it. I definitely want it.
Yeah, I've got them both. They're both really good flavors. Matt Harrison has a question for Tim. Have you ever worked with Butch Vig?
I have. It was for a new artist, a very pretty young woman, and her name was Jessie. I can't think of her last name. But what really a perfect gentleman. I'm trying to think. At the time I worked with him, Garbage was really a big band, and really a thoughtful, nice guy. I don't know if there's anything. I really wish I had worked with him again after that, but
Butch is a great guy.
Yeah, I mean, he went on after that didn't he kind of just work with the Foo Fighters a ton after that?
He produced a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, he did that Wasted Light album with the Foo Fighters. I know that.
And I mean, he's one of those producers that usually, I mean, he's a guy, and there's several of these guys out there. They actually never really needed studio guitar players because they always were able to pull together guitarists from the band situations that were great. There were other producers that would hire studio musicians 100% of the time, but he would generally pull his musicians from bands. Like for him, rather than hiring a studio musician, he would get somebody like some famous guitar player to do him a favor, or whatever,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So what did you do with Butch Vig? Just out of curiosity.
No, it was. I can't think of her last name. Her name.
Oh,
was
it was with the girl.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Sorry about that.
Okay.
What was so Timothy Pierce has a question for Tim Pierce.
Nice to meet you, Timothy. Finally.
There we go. What was your hardest session? Or most challenging?
Shakira.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you talk to musicians and producers and engineers and even administrative travel agents, everybody, it was I did her first English speaking record, which it may still be her biggest selling record.
Right.
It's called Laundry Service, and she flew me and Paul Bushnell and Abe Jr. to Miami. And I met Lester Mendez there, so I ended up being on a Santana record after that because of Lester Mendez. So something good came out of it. But I sat there with her for 10 days, and she never really liked anything I did. Or maybe she did. I don't know. And the hours were brutal because we would get there at 11 and we work with the songwriters, and she'd show up in the afternoon, and we'd work from like 11 a.m. to 4 a.m. or something,
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, God.
And it was I got to a point where I was doing the songs and leaving my mistakes because I was sure from her demeanor that she was going to replace everything I did. And you know what happened? She got used to her rough mixes and she kept everything I did. Everything.
Even the mistakes.
Yeah, and they got fixed or buried or whatever. I don't know. Okay. It's just, the kind of thing I was just like, well, I'd rather do that over, but I'm not gonna, because let's just get through this. I'll tell you this. It was so bad that if it had been LA, I would have walked up to her on the second day and I would have said, "You have hired the wrong guitar player. Let's find you the right guy. Get him in here." And I would have had, her get Rusty or somebody in there.
Right.
But she's the one who's famous. I mean, Matt Chamberlain just drove away from a session of hers in Vancouver. If you talk to musicians, it's really common. I mean, Pat Leonard went to work with her, and I think she made him wait for a day. And then Glenn Ballard went to work with her, and he got so nervous that he couldn't play his keyboard. I mean, it's tough, and I'm sure she will never listen to this. Will never get.
No, yeah, I'll never get her.
It's a different world.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, I don't think Shakira. This isn't the demographic for Shakira.
Well, no. it's like talking to people who used to work for Prince. There's been a long history of Prince tech firings. You're going to get fired if you go to work for Prince. You will be fired.
You will be fired.
You will be fired eventually.
I'll be right back, guys.
Eventually you will be fired, and God knows why.
Yeah, some of these people are very, very tough, and it's about. I always found it's 50-50. I mean, some artists are just really, really not nice, and then others are so nice you can hardly believe it.
Well, you worked with Don Henley, right?
I did, yeah.
And how was that?
Well, that's closer to home because there's still. I mean, we all
still work.
Well, the thing is, I know people who work with him and who have worked with him, and so I would be a little more diplomatic, but I don't know that I would talk out of school. Let me just see if I can think.
That's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, it's true.
A lot of people have not gotten along with Don very well.
It's true. Here's a good story that'll tell you the culture of. This is great. This will tell it like it is without directing it totally at him. In the year 2000, I did a tour with Linda Ronstadt, and the culmination of that tour was the giant concert at Staples Center. I don't know if you remember the year 2000, but that's when everything was supposed to break because it was
I vaguely remember that. Yeah, it seemed like it was yesterday, actually, but
yeah, so,
Y2K.
So I was part of this huge LA gig at the Staples Center, New Year's Eve, the year 2000. Okay. And we opened with Linda Ronstadt, then it was Jackson Browne, and then it was the Eagles. Okay. And a huge gig, great ground, every band had the greatest gig of their lives that night and got paid the most because it was the ultimate, it was the year 2000.
Right.
Yeah.
1999 to 2000. Yep.
My stage pass had a yellow dot on it, and the security was so intense that it was a photo ID'd stage pass. I went to a photo booth, and my picture was on my stage pass.
Right.
The Eagles had set it up so that my stage pass in the opening act expired at the beginning of their show. So that means I was not allowed in the building.
Why?
The show began. I did not, I didn't have tickets. There were no tickets, available. I couldn't buy tickets. I had to tell an LAPD guy a story to get back in the dressing room and get my guitar so that I could leave.
Wow.
So, without naming names, let's think about what's not nice.
Yeah, I understand.
I had a friend who was on the Staples Center staff named Dave Cavelli, who had been on the road with me in Rick Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
And he was he ran the team that kept that place open. And he gave us passes to sit on the side of the stage and watch some of the Eagles show. And I remember them looking at us like, what the heck are they doing there? We can't throw them out because they have the new passes, but it was awful.
Yeah.
There are other stories.
Oh, there is.
I remember James Harrow went to audition for him. You know James, right?
I know James. Yeah. I haven't seen him
and James,
time. Yeah.
James, he learned the material, and Don Henley was so mad at him for not learning the material to his satisfaction. He wrote him a letter.
Oh wow.
And this is a guitar player at an audition that he didn't choose. Just, why would you take the time
to write a letter even after you didn't?
Yeah.
So I'll stop there. It's too close to home.
He has
Yeah, too close to home.
My daughter worked with a production manager that was doing Henley for a while, and yeah.
So you have this group of people that's nicer than you. You can't believe how nice they are, and then you have it's like 50-50. It's
well, then you got the how do I want to say this? There is the old quintessential rock star persona that doesn't so much exist anymore.
Yeah.
But an old school guy, it's right or wrong or indifferent. It's there still, and grew up in a different time, different place, different set of rules.
Yeah, it's a big part of it.
And there's a different set of rules now, be that good or bad. I'm not sure.
No. But Pete Thorne's in the chat.
Oh, great.
Pete Thorne, why aren't you here?
And he says Don was good to him. He said,
there you go. See?
So he said different strokes.
Yeah.
And then
we weren't saying Don wasn't good to us either. So
no, it happens.
Saying
anything. He said, Tim, tell the story about the limo driver picking you up for the Springfield gig and going way off track.
Oh, this is so great. It was not Springfield. It was Corey Hart. Do you remember Corey Hart?
Oh,
Sunglasses.
yeah.
I wear my sunglasses at night. So the guy
Yeah.
from his record company calls me to go play a gig in New York with Corey. And I learned the songs, relearned the songs because I had played on a couple of them. And I go to New York the day early, and it's at the World's Fairgrounds. And I check into the hotel, and I talk to the radio people. And the next morning I wake up and I'm watching vans all day long shuttle people to the gig, which is right across the street, but it's a big venue. It's a parkland. You know, you can't see it. You see trees. I'm literally right across the highway from the World's Fair. And I think, well, I'll just wait for my particular ride, which is at 3:00. There are vans shuttling people all day. And I'm thinking, maybe I should take an early van and just get over there early. Should have done it. So I go down and wait in the lobby at 3, and I wait there for 40 minutes, and I see this guy from East India on the phone, frantically calling on the house phone. And I'm thinking, and then I see a limo parked out there, and I wonder if that's my guy. I've waited 40 minutes in the lobby. It's now 3:40. The gig is, I think, at 5:30 or 6. It's an early gig, you know, at a big festival.
Yeah.
And I go to this guy and I say, "Are you here for Tim Pierce?" And he says, "Yes," in very, very broken English. I said, "Well, we got to go, man. I've been waiting here." So I get in the back of this limousine, and he proceeds to drive us, I don't know, 80 miles away.
Wow.
I mean, he had been in the country for a few weeks, and there was a cell number to backstage, and this was before I didn't have a cell phone. There was a cell phone in the back of the car that I used and couldn't get through. And I kept thinking, and he kept leading me to believe that we were going to get to the gig. We never made it to the gig.
Oh man.
Oh. So Corey Hart played without you.
He played without me, and the problem was I kept thinking this guy, and he kept convincing me that we were almost there. I eventually just have him drive me back to the airport because I had a flight out later that night. It was, I mean, poor Corey. I don't know what he did. I don't, you know, it's like I think everybody kind of thought it was my fault, including my wife. She was like, "How could you have screwed this up?" And the record company guy, he didn't pay me because I think he thought it was my fault. I mean, how stupid would you have to be as a musician not to get across the street? I mean,
well, there's that.
Oh, that's funny.
I think Corey, what he did is he probably sat down at his keyboard, and because he knows, you know, he can play he probably just did it at his keyboard and it was fine.
Wow. And you never talked to him after that?
Oh no, I did talk to him, but it was kind of awkward.
Oh wow.
Hey, sorry, but you know, a guy picked me up and he took me 80 miles away.
Yeah, it was, and I didn't know New York well enough to, you know, and the thing is, I kept thinking we were about to make it.
Well,
that's so funny. So I'm going to go back into the chat.
I haven't looked at any of the chat. I'm sorry, everyone.
Cars in Depth, Dave. When are you going back to Detroit?
Detroit. I'm coming back to Detroit in that would be May 19th for the show that we're going to put on to Detroit.
Is that happening?
That's happening May 19th with Seduce and Cairo Knife Fight and one other band yet to be named.
Ooh.
Yes.
All right, I'll be there. Okay, let's see. We got a question. What strings and guitar pick do you use for standard tunings, Tim?
I switched over to elixirs a long time ago because my hands produce so much acid that I would ruin a set of acoustic guitar strings, for instance, within 45 minutes. So elixirs were a life-changing thing for me. I really like that. I use nanowebs, either 10 through 46 or 9 through 42. And I used to hire a guy about 8 or 10 hours a month to change guitars. And now that, you know, it's like 8 or 10 hours every 6 months. You know, I generally don't change my own strings. I hire people, whoever's around, to, you know, change them for me. And it's very rare now that strings last forever. Mm-hmm. And what was the other question? Picks?
Yeah.
I use a soft nylon Jim Dunlop for acoustic a lot because it's very, very...
thin pick, yeah.
Yeah, the thin pick, the gray one. It's 60. Mm-hmm. I think I have one right here. Let's look at it. Let me pull it off.
Yeah, thin picks on acoustic are amazing.
Yeah, and it's soft, and yeah, Dunlop nylon 73. And then I'll use medium picks for like rhythm stuff. And then for soloing, I love using this pointed Dunlop. It's got a sharp point to it, and it's heavy. It's extra
like a
heavy.
Jazz pick kind of thing?
But no, it's big actually, but I'm going to find one. Everything ends up on the floor here.
Well, that's the normal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pens, everything.
Where is it? Oh, it's on the floor. Cord, yep, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't find it.
You know, hey.
It's all right.
That's fine.
That's it, though. I mean, it's like 3 families of picks.
Okay.
Thin, medium, and heavy with a point.
Yeah, and the heavy one has a point. It makes me feel like Yngwie.
We got a question here, and I know someone mentioned about your master classes, and then someone asked about Joe Miller wants to know about do you give private lessons? So.
No, I don't give private lessons. The way it works is you can join the master class either monthly or yearly, and there's a 14-day free trial. So I do that to protect people. They put down their credit card and they try it for 14 days. And if they don't like it, they just leave. Because it's not for everybody. It's I've got like 70 hours of content and about 800 videos. It keeps growing all the time. A year from now, it might have twice that. But it's every episode is a new theme, and so it's not structured. It kind of goes all over the place. One thing might be blues, one thing might be the modes, one thing might be Josh Smith showing how he plays guitar. It's completely random each time. There are episodes that just it's like a magazine. It's something different every time. Mm-hmm. And what was the other question?
Let's see. Do you give private lessons?
Oh, yeah, right.
Just tell us about the master class as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So the master class is, I make it easy for people to answer questions about it because they can literally join for free for 2 weeks. So that's what I'd recommend if you want to, try it out. But it's really sounds, parts, gear. I mean, my spiel in the promotional video kind of says what it is. I try and just cover everything. Sessions, it's completely, all over the whole world of guitar playing, and being a professional guitar player in LA for, as long as I have. The private lesson thing, the way I like to say it is this: I've provided a client service for 35 years. So I've worked for people, producers, artists, songwriters, engineers, composers for 35 years. And I still do that. So that's my client service job. It's a client paying me to provide a service. Mm-hmm. So I don't need to replace it with another client service job. And I'm replacing it with something that's actually a business with employees that is a product that I sell to people. And so that's the main reason I don't give lessons, is because if I have an hour to spend with somebody, that goes to one of my session clients. Mm-hmm. And if I have another hour to spend, it goes to my business. And then if I have another hour to spend, it goes to my marriage and my family. Lastly, if I have another hour, it goes to exercise. So private lessons, there's really nothing, I really couldn't charge enough to sit down and do it, unfortunately, because I just have all these other priorities. And I know one of my favorite guys on YouTube is a guy named Paul Davids. He just released a video that's about him quitting his private teaching business. It's something that you can do if you want, but I would rather reach the whole world with video content than sit with one person. So I apologize. I wish I could. I wish I could spend the time.
No, that's great. You have the master class.
Yeah.
So, one of the other questions, a while back we had Chris Van Tassel from J Rocket Audio on with Sean Tubbs, and I'm sure we briefly touched upon your pedal with them, but if you want to just tell us a little bit about your Tim Pierce overdrive pedal with them, right?
Yeah, it's really two pedals, and the power section, they emulated the power section of a nailer, and they did it really, really well. And then the other side of the pedal, has tone controls, and it's a sweet sounding overdrive. I have to say that they are mostly responsible for it. They approached me and they created it, and I did a little bit of critique on it, and then it was done and they released it. So I really have to say it's mostly them. I am very grateful for the fact that they did the logo with the glasses. And the other thing I'm grateful for is it was very popular, and it still is. It's one of only three big pedals that they're keeping in their line. They've sold many, many hundreds of them. And I'm really grateful that they made something that sounded so good. But it really didn't have a lot to do with me. I think they maybe understood. I talked to Chris, last week for a long time. I think they just understood what my tone was and my aesthetic, and they created it. It was a real success. I mean, they've sold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them.
Yeah, it's a great pedal. Sounds great.
Maybe, I don't know what the actual number is. I should ask him. But.
No, that's great. No, that's really good.
Yeah, and like if you asked John Shanks that question, he would give you, well, I wanted to have my 56 Les Paul sounding like this through my, I honestly don't think in technical terms about sound, much less than other guitar players. I'm trying to be better at that. But to me, I'm more experienced sound, and then I just kind of forget how I got it. And, that's something I'm working on. Give me a few more years.
It's funny. I watched your video about the Smoke on the Water, the breakdown of Smoke on the Water.
Yeah.
And it was great how you broke down, each of the different, how you get the sound, and, the slapback reverb and being kind of the integral part. But I loved it even when you went to a completely different amp, and you dialed it in there also by, okay, well, let's take back some of the treble, let's add some of the bass, it was really cool to watch how you did that.
That was a fun, spontaneous moment, and it could have gone another way, but it was kind of nice that I put up the sound and I thought, oh, this is not right at all. And I don't know if I can save this, but I think I got the sound by taking away bottom end and then just adjusting the gain on the pedal. So there are simple things you can do to get there quickly. But yeah, that was a great moment for me too. It's like, okay, I got the sound. Now let's plug into this film projector amp and see if we can get it again. And I turned it on. And it was like, no.
No, it was not even close. Yeah.
No.
And then dialed, and it was like, okay, that sort of sounds like it. And the reverb helps. And okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the end, it was like, there you go. That's it.
Right.
Yeah, that's super cool. So Timothy West has a question for you. What's your favorite Crowded House song that you played on?
I mean, of course, it's "Don't Dream It's Over" because it was a song that got me a lot of work for years afterwards. And I actually played on. There was a band that did a remake of it. I got to play on that version too.
Oh, really?
Sixpence None the Richer, they're called. And they did a remake of it that was actually good too. I actually got to play on that version too. But most of Neil Finn is a great guitar player. And Mitchell Froom brought me into their first record because he didn't trust that Neil Finn could do it. And as the record progressed, it became apparent that Neil had what it took. And so they didn't necessarily need me, but I was happy to be there. And we tracked that song live. The whole record, like what you hear on that song was live off the floor at Capitol Records. So I'm pretty proud of it.
That's the best.
Yeah.
You capture that moment in time.
Yeah.
And it goes on. Well, that's the best.
Well, it's great. It's a great song. And that's the thing that's harder to find for all of us as musicians. There's so many great musicians, but it's harder to make great music. It's a harder thing.
Yeah, but the magic of also playing.
Yeah.
Capturing it on the floor.
Yeah, live.
With a band. In a live context.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's something special about that. Yeah. The way it used to be done all the time.
That's right. That's right.
Where now, not so much.
I would do Meatloaf records with Jim Steinman, and we would work for 3 days on one song. And by the time you were in it on the third day, every corner you had it just locked, every move. And they were complex songs. They were like Broadway, they had different sections, different tempos. But working up a song is, and you could do it with a band in 2 hours. You could do it with some bands, you could do it in 10 minutes. But working up a song as a band and then nailing it, there are things that happen that never would happen any other way. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
We've got Nathan Lister from Hong Kong. How did you first approach the need to learn different styles and tones when you started out with within the session industry? He asked.
I always listened to records and guitar parts on records, and so I always kind of knew what was required. And for me, it was being scared to death in front of a songwriter who's asking me to make something that sounds like In Excess. Right. And then make something that sounds like, Motley Crue. And then now make something that sounds like, rockabilly. And now make something that sounds like Nirvana. And now that's really what it is. If you're in a situation with people who are trying to find, they're trying to make their song sound great. And they basically ask you for, guitar is amazing because guitar parts that you have in your arsenal come from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. They're all valid. I mean, maybe you're supposed to sound like Paul Jackson Jr. for this part, or maybe you're supposed to sound like Eddie Van Halen for another part. It's pretty great. The way that I learned was on-the-job training. I was here. I had moved here. I was already making a living, and I wasn't that good at rhythm guitar, and I wasn't that good at being a studio musician. I wasn't that good at getting parts and sounds. I was surrounded by people who were good at it. I mean, I played with Steve Lukather with the band Charisma. I mean, when I was 23 years old, I saw people who were good at this. I did a Japanese record with Steve Lukather where he brought out Larry Carlton. He brought out Larry Carlton chops instantaneously. Yeah. Or even Michael Thompson. I mean, he could do anything, any sound, any part. And then Landau, it took me.
That was another planet, yeah.
Yeah, it took me the entire decade of the 90s to sort of play R&B guitar, to do that thing Landau did, and then it wasn't required anymore.
Yeah.
The sound changed. I mean, and I still couldn't do what he does because it's a different thing. But
I remember watching early on when I was a kid, watching Dan Huff in the studio, and just like producer played him the track, and literally they were asking for his interpretation, what part should go here. They were literally asking, here's the track, here's what we have so far, what do you think? And I would literally watch him instantaneously come up with the most perfect part you've ever heard on just the drop of a hat, the first play.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Play along with it for a second.
Yeah.
And then just go,
yeah, what
do you think? Perfect. Do it. And then just do it.
Yeah, that's a job.
And the most perfect part. Yeah, it was like literally You couldn't have asked. It was the idealistic, perfect part for it.
Well, that's what all these
at
guys,
a moment.
Yeah. Immediately, like I am not allowed. I don't get to take more than a minute or two to get a guitar sound, and I don't get more than a minute or two to create my part.
Yeah,
and that's the job.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, are you also? Can you read music and charts and all that stuff too, as well, or no?
I was never a note reader, and some guys sort of could read notes. They're just modest about their reading, but they really can read. But in my particular line of work, my job was about what you're just talking about, where I was hired to create guitar parts.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, they're just showing you a chord chart. And so I'm really good at chord charts. I'm really good at playing the same thing twice if I need to, at remembering what I just played and organizing parts and sounds. But I was never a note reader, and that's I wish I could read.
Right?
Huh?
Dean was a note reader, right?
Well, he is a note reader.
Yeah.
I sat next to him at the Grammys. We did this daytime Grammys. There's a film of that it's on my YouTube channel. And I studied for a whole week to get the songs, and he and the other guys just came in and read them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just crazy when
you
see guys do that too.
Yeah.
Just like,
I
have up, down.
Yeah.
That's great.
You're like, damn.
Yeah.
So Ian Zabalis has a question. Have you ever worked with Rick Rubin?
I never have. I met him once, and he was very nice, and he was actually very svelte. I think he used to be fat, but he was very skinny. The thing about Rick Rubin is, and Jimmy Iovine was like that, these are guys who don't necessarily participate in the actual work. They oversee the work. And so the people who work for him, they usually work with somebody who's underneath him, like another co-producer or an engineer, and then he reviews the work and asks for changes. And so he could, in his prime, he was doing like 5 records at a time because he was just being delivered finished work and then asking for changes.
Except from what I understand, except for when he would work with vocals on an artist.
Well, that's interesting
he
because
would come in. He would come in, from what I understand, at least from a few productions.
Yeah,
would come in and literally lay on a couch next to the vocalist as the vocalist is doing the vocals, and literally kind of coach the vocalist into the what he got out of him.
That makes sense because Howard Benson is like that. Howard Benson only concentrates on what he thinks is important, and it's mostly the vocals. The other part of that is that you're developing a relationship with the key. That's the relationship. It's the artist, and the stuff that the drum beat and the guitar parts, all that stuff is just it's just in support of the vocal anyway. So it makes sense. Yeah.
Actually, one of Rick Rubin's recent albums that he worked with Neil Diamond on. I don't know if you ever heard it, but it's great. It is.
I'm sure. Yeah.
It's just completely stripped down acoustic, and it's really good. Dave, you should check it out.
I did a Neil Diamond record right after that one that was with Don Was, and Don Was is there participating the whole time. But it was the record I did. I think it's Neil's most recent record. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with Don Was. Yeah.
He just said he's not going to tour anymore. I think I read.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's too bad.
Hey, I have an interesting question here that's geared at me. I just saw. I haven't been really I have really bad eye allergies today, so looking at the screen is hard for me. Someone goes, Dave, do YouTubers have the right to criticize components in your pedals, amplifiers? Can they do that without being reprimanded? I think that's what it says, reprimanded. Please talk, Dave. So I think this is sort of a people asking sort of about what went down with Wampler pedals and Phil McKnight. I don't know if I really want to totally address that. Do they have the right to their opinions? Unless they actually know what they're looking at, maybe they don't have a right to their opinion. Unless they have years of experience manufacturing products, maybe they don't have their right to an opinion. But then again, they do have a right to their opinion. So
it might not be an informed opinion.
It might not be a very informed opinion, but it might be a right to. I'm not going to say they don't have a right to their own opinion. Of course they do. So maybe that's as far as I'm going to go with that. But unless you're really in the gear manufacturing business, and you know years and years of experience, what works and what doesn't work, it's hard for me to get behind the judgment of necessarily a YouTuber. You know, Tim can attest or whatever. I've had 30 plus years doing this, and I over a period of time, I know what breaks, I know what works, what doesn't work. I've seen it over and over and over again. So that's all I got to say.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, this stuff has been going on.
You have a right to your opinion. It's fine. Have your opinion. That's not a problem. I'm not going to.
People talk about this stuff on the gear page all the time. There's 30 page. Yeah,
I'm not going to sit there and
yeah,
insult you. So
gotcha. Pablo Martinez has a question. Please ask him about Petty John pedals. Do you know much about them?
I've never used one, so I can't.
No, they're good.
I've heard that they're good. I know Tim.
No, I've used many. They're good. They're a good pedal.
Yeah, Sean Tubbs has done a bunch of demos for them.
Just some good sounding boosts and various drives and things they have. It's just really cool, and they look really cool. I think they look really
cool. Guys, keep talking. I'm gonna go. I have to do a little move on YouTube right now, and let me just do it.
Okay.
And I'll be back with you in about 60 seconds. But you can keep talking to me. Can you still see me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see. Now I'm okay. Now I have to verify it's me. Okay, hold on here.
No problem.
No problem. So Dave, there was actually a question for you earlier about, and I can't remember who asked me it, but it was on our Facebook page about the pickups and when they're going to be available and where they can get them.
Okay, pickups are going to be available shortly. We're kind of waiting on packaging right now. We're just kind of waiting on our packaging coming in. We actually have them physically, but we just need the packaging to send them out to you. They'll be available on our website and through various dealers. So these are the same pickups that we actually currently use in our guitars. So,
and both the humbuckers and the P90s and the
humbuckers, P90s, and the single coils. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
Boy, did the single coils sound good.
Yeah. I mean, they all sounded good.
You wouldn't know, Mark, unless there was a left-handed guitar coming your way, right?
Well, I mean, I've heard people playing them. So that's why I'm just jealous. You did say that you guys were going to be building some lefty ones, right?
Yes, and one of them will be yours.
Well, when are you going to do that? When is that happening?
We have to place an order with Grover shortly, so actually you should tell me what you want.
All right, I'll email it to you this weekend.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm actually getting my guitar from Grover on Monday.
Oh, hey, great.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll arrive in one piece.
Oh, you're right. Hopefully it won't be broken at the tip again.
You know what? If it is, I'm just taking it. I'm keeping it. However it arrives, I'm keeping it. So I don't think Grover wants to hear from me again.
Hey, here. Tim, are you back?
I'm back. I had to just change the setting on a YouTube video.
Hey,
let's talk.
Someone asked, have you ever worked with Mutt Lange?
No, I never have. But I talked to Dan Huff about Mutt Lange. He would hire Dan. I talked to Michael Thompson about Mutt Lange. Mutt Lange is also a great guitar player, and a lot of the time he wants, he wanted Dan to actually play the exact part that Mutt was having him play, and Dan would have to sit there and just do it over and over and over because Mutt Lange is very methodical.
Yeah.
But the greatest story I have about Mutt Lange is that I used to work with his programmer. His programmer then moved to Switzerland to work with him. Ula Romo, really great guy. I would do sessions for Ula. And Ula said, I would say, so what are Mutt's hours? And he said, oh, it's not bad. It's 11 to 4. And I thought, okay. And then a little bell went off in my head. You mean 11 a.m. to 4 a.m.? He said, yeah. I guess Mutt actually sleeps in there were stories about Michelangelo just getting up and working and then just sleeping. And Prince was that way too. Prince would stay up for 3 days and not even think about sleeping. But I think Mutt, the story about Mutt is that he'll sleep for 15 minutes and go back to work. So I'd have to talk to Michael Thompson. Michael Thompson loved working with him, and so did Dan Huff. But Dan would go, why are you flying me all the way to Switzerland and paying me all this money to just play this simple part that you could play? There was a little of that going on. You're just such a perfectionist. Mutt Lange is one of the best songwriters in the history of, he wrote a lot of those songs. And so, and the other thing Ola told me, I guess he did a Bryan Adams record with him in Canada, and he literally was there for months, and he did not, the first time he went outside was when he was leaving for the airport and the record was done. It's just, it's just all work all the time. So you got pretty amazing.
Here's a good question from Ben Coombs. Tim, was there a favorite studio or room that you like to record in?
There have been many, but I would say that my favorite studio is Sunset Sound.
Oh yeah.
They have kept, all the rooms are old, so it's like walking into an old school or whatever. There are 3 rooms and a courtyard, so you're constantly running into people, which is a wonderful thing. The actual studio is completely paid for, so they own the building and they own everything outright. There is no debt, so all the money goes to the salaries of the tech people who are there and stay there forever. So you have this amazing staff. The parking lot is really big, and you can pull your car right up to the entrance and unload your gear. It's not pretentious at all. And when you look at the records on the wall, it should be the most pretentious place in the world. Yeah. Van Halen 1. Purple Rain, Led Zeppelin 4, every Doors record. It just goes on and on and on and on. It sounds great. It feels great. The headphones sound great. I know the manager, it's incredible. Their other studios are great too. Henson is great. They're really nice to you. But I'll tell you, one thing I really like about a studio is when you have access to the outdoors. And Sunset Sound is that way because of the courtyard and the parking lot, to be quite honest. Henson is harder to get out of because of the security. Capitol is amazing, but it's also harder to get out of because of the security. So oddly for me, I like being able to walk outside. Now, my favorite studio right now is a place called Sphere. It's the former Royal Tone. Linda Perry owned it after that. And
have you been working there?
I have, yeah. I've been working
Francesco, with my buddy Francesco. Francesco Camelli.
Oh, that's Francesco. So Francesco has created the best environment in town. And
absolutely. It's the best coffee.
Everything about it, the staff, Gary, I've known Gary, the tech, since the 80s. The guitar gear, the amp gear, the rooms. And because of it, it's like booked solid. That's my favorite studio now, Sphere in Burbank.
Yeah, Sphere is great. Formerly Royal Town, Linda Perry studio.
The original story, it was built, an heir to the Piggly Wiggly grocery fortune, built that studio for $13 million. It's a $13 million facility.
Yeah.
The actual building.
Yeah.
And now he's built upon that. So it's pretty great.
Yeah, no, I remember when he first bought it, and we started doing some business together, Francesco and I. And I was at the opening party for the studio. And I was seeing it as it was being remodeled and stuff when he was remodeling it. So I'm very, very familiar with it. And it is an amazing place.
Yeah,
cool.
it is. It's truly amazing. I mean, these people, East West is like that. It's a great studio too. I love the staff.
Formerly Ocean Way.
Yeah, well, the Ocean Way is
Well,
now,
it's still Ocean, yeah,
what are they
but-
what's it called now? They
I
changed
don't
the
know.
name. United. Now it's called United.
But that
yeah,
big
both
room, the
buildings
big
were
rooms
Ocean
were
Way.
Ocean Way for a while.
Yeah, it
Back
was
in the
Ocean
day.
Way, and yeah, I'm not.
United Art, was it a United Artist originally or something?
No, when I moved here, they were both called United Western.
United Western, that was
Yeah,
it.
and then that's where I did my first record there with a band called Shandy, and Van Halen was rehearsing next door. And yeah, Van Halen. Yeah, you live in LA, and it's just part of your,
DNA.
Yeah, and then like Pete's his friend, and you're his friend too. You've worked with
Yeah,
him, So it's
I
like,
worked with Van Halen tons.
yeah, it's so great living near these people. But yeah, East West, I mean, they keep the rooms the same, which is one of it's a really neat thing. Like they remodeled the common area at East West, but they keep the rooms the same, which is really, really smart. And that studio is really affordable. The staff is amazing. It's really nice. And the reason it gets to exist is because they have, the guy running it is kind of a patron. A patron is somebody who basically covers all the extra costs so that artists can work.
Yeah.
And some of these studios are like that. I would say Sphere is like that. I mean, he doesn't overcharge for the rooms, and he's offering something amazing to artists.
Yeah.
And covering basically the overhead.
Yeah.
Great.
Right.
Very cool.
Yeah. He had a very successful studio in England for years.
Oh, cool. Great.
Sphere in England.
Well, I'm sure this one is successful too, but boy, he just spared no expense in renovating
it's the finest gear. It's the finest
Amazing.
everything
Yeah.
that you can imagine,
Yeah.
and knowing him, it won't be any other way. That's just the way he is. Yeah. So.
Mark Satterweight has a question for Tim. How is it playing with drummer Kenny Aronoff?
It's amazing. I know him. I get to know these people. I mean, we've traveled together. We've done all kinds of stuff together. I met him in the 80s. The first thing I did with him was a Belinda Carlisle record, and he was really bombastic, and he had a huge personality, which he still does. Mm. But the thing about Kenny is that he's an elastic drummer, and what you want, well, they're all different kinds of drummers, but he's great in that he can stay with the click. But when he plays a fill, he makes a decision to either pull ahead or pull behind so that it actually gives you something that's very human. And then when he lands on the downbeat, he comes back to the click again. So you think about that. He's actually has this elastic performance around the click so that what he does is dead accurate, but it's also human. Right. He's amazing. And he's gotten better he's one of those guys who gets better all the time, just like Dean. He's a better drummer. Kenny is a better drummer today than he was when I first met him in the 80s. It's just, it's amazing.
So tell me about. You've also, speaking of other famous drummers, I'm sure you work with Abe Jr.
Oh yeah,
and who is another different style than Kenny. Yeah, amazing, ridiculous drummer. I've known him for a lot of years.
Do you want me to say some things about Abe?
If you want to.
I do. Abe is somebody, he's kind of like, he's an artist drummer. So what you do when you hire Abe, first of all, he never, even before he got the McCartney gig, he never took every session. He and Matt Chamberlain share that in common. They really, really, they could work more and make more money as session musicians, but they're very careful about the work they do. They don't overwork, and they choose stuff that they really want to play on. In Abe's particular case, he's such a great musician, and he's also a producer naturally, intrinsically. that when you hire him, he's going to give you a concept on drums that is his.
Mm-hmm.
It's his concept.
Yeah.
He's not going to give you Kenny Aronoff.
Right.
And you had better not ask him to do anything like that because you're hiring an artist. He's going to give you his interpretation.
Be, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the strongest thing you can do. I mean, Jim
That's why you're hiring him.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Jim Keltner,
or Steve Gadd.
Yeah, exactly. You want these people to be themselves, and Abe is, he's an artist. He's not just a drummer. He's an artist. And the thing is, I've been in sessions with Abe where the producer walks out of the room because they have other stuff to do, and Abe will start producing, and he'll help with the guitar. I mean, he was the guy who first turned me on to the Radiohead whammy sound, because he had done it on something he had played that guitar part on one of his own things, Abe had. So he turned me on to that beautiful, glitchy, whammy sound.
Yeah.
So he thinks of he's thinking of the music, not just the drums.
Yeah, he's such a wonderful human being too.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Amazing person. I've known him for a lot of years, since back when I used to tech for Mike Landau back in the day. I used to tech for Mike Landau when he did his live gigs with like Burning Water and Raging Honkies and the couple bands he had. And I knew Abe from the Raging Honkies, obviously, and that was like way back.
Yeah, and Abe's dad lives around the corner. Abe Sr. lives around the corner from me, and I've done tons of sessions with Abe Sr. And so, and what's his brother's name? Mateos. I know Mateos too. Abe's brother's a really great programmer, musician also. Mateo, that's it, Mateo.
Right.
Very cool.
But yeah, that's like LA royalty. I mean, families where you grew up in LA and your dad's one of the top studio musicians, and then you become a studio musician. That's like that's hard to compete with.
Right.
Yeah, that's lineage. That's great. So tell me about Belinda Carlisle, because when I was in high school, I had a huge crush on her. Was she awesome to work with? Was she cool?
She was actually really nice. The thing is, I ended up working with all the Go-Go's except for the bass player. And I ended up at some gig somewhere where 3 of them were there, and I got busted because I never told any of the other girls that I was working with the others individually. I think it was Jane Weedland she said, "You're like a therapist. You don't tell anybody that you're working with anybody." I worked with everybody except Karen Valentine. I think that was her name, but I worked with 3 or 4 of the other women, and because they were all songwriters, and I did demos. I never stopped doing demos. Even when the day after I did the Bruce Springsteen record, I was doing a demo for a guy in his bedroom. I never stopped doing that. And so I was always doing demos with songwriters, no matter who it was. But the thing is, I actually auditioned for her tour. She was doing a solo tour when she did her solo record, and I actually got the gig, and I turned it down because I had 2 other things going. I had Toy Matinee, and I actually auditioned for Animal Logic and got the gig too. And turned that down. Michael Thompson had done the record, but that was Stanley Clarke and Stuart Copeland. And playing with Stanley Clarke and Stuart Copeland was a rush. It was a rush.
Yeah, God, that name has been uttered in my ears for so many years, and then they were like, oh yeah.
Yeah, and I almost, during that period of time too, I almost became the guitar player in Mr. Mister. I auditioned and I got almost to the end, and Pat Muscolato, the drummer, called me and said, "Well, you fucked up. You almost got it. We're not going with you." I don't know exactly what it was I didn't do right, but it was actually a blessing in disguise, because after I lost that gig, I got the gig with Toy Matinee, and that was one of the best things I'd ever done. I worked with Pat Leonard for like 2 decades after that, so it was great.
Wow.
Great.
That's super cool. So Dan Pfeiffer has a question. He wants to know, how many guitars do you own, Tim?
I'm up to about between 80 and 90, and I'm trying to I'm trying to reduce that number. It's time. Yeah, it's time. I mean,
are they mostly vintage?
No, I never really got into the vintage thing. I like new guitars, and I like paying, $2 or $3 or $4 grand for a guitar. And although I did buy a vintage 335 from Norm right before Christmas, it's the most expensive guitar I've ever bought, but it's totally devalued. It's been refretted, and the pickups are not original, and the Bigsby was replaced with a stop tailpiece. So heavily reduced in value. I like guitars that are affordable, and I'm beginning to, I'm going to, although I do get given guitars these days, and when you're given a guitar, you can't really sell it. And sometimes I can't give them back without, it seems kind of insulting to give it back, after you've been given it. So it's a quality problem. I have mates, I pay mates for storage, so I can store whatever I want over there. And I'm going to try and reduce, though. I'm going to try and thin the herd, as they all say.
Thin the herd a little bit and buy a little more.
Yeah.
Some more amps. There you go.
Yeah.
More amps, more guitars.
Timothy West, do you have any Neil Finn stories? No, I'm not familiar with Neil Finn.
Well, that's the guy in Crowded House. And
okay.
He is Crowded House. He is the songs that you hear by Crowded House. And I don't really have any stories about him. I mean, I know that he did very well, and he has a beautiful family, and they live in New Zealand. He's got some sort of a complex and a facility and a studio there. He was such a great songwriter that, his songs will live forever. No, the thing is, most of what gets done in my line of work is just people showing up during the daytime and working as professionals and then going home at night. It's really, there's not a lot of, and it's gotten more that way. I'm in the production side of music, and it's just people working hard and doing their best most of the time.
No, awesome. Ian Zabalis, Tim, ever play for Sarah McLachlan?
No, but I loved that guy, Bill. What was her guitar player's name?
Bill
wasn't Petrell, something like that. Bill.
Yeah, he was cool, huh?
Yeah, and really, really like random events that he would put together.
Yeah,
and
cool.
But that's the kind of music. That's the kind of music that I wish I could still play. I mean, it's funny, all that music got inherited by people in Nashville, and it's really, it makes me jealous that the music that I liked to play the most, it was like Nashville said, okay, you don't want it, we'll take it, and now it's there. So you hear that kind of music, in addition to a lot of corporate country kind of stuff too, but you hear those kind of guitar tones and that kind of music coming out of Nashville, and it's a drag because you're not allowed to really do that here in LA, as much.
Well, it's sort of like that era of guitar music went to Nashville and is there still.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
It's funny, we do Nashville NAMM. We'll be doing it again this year, and it's interesting because it's primarily an instrument show. It's a guitar, a smaller, way smaller, guitar driven show.
Wow.
Not so much all the other companies, mostly guitars and effects and stuff. And last year we went, and I hadn't been to Nashville in I don't know, 15 plus years or something. And I must say it's changed a lot in 15 plus years.
I bet.
Maybe for the worse. No offense to anyone in Nashville, but it's gotten a little more Las Vegas like, and a little less like the cool honky tonk kind of place.
More touristy, yeah.
Well, and music production has become Anyway, finish. What were you about to say?
A lot of guitar playing still. A lot of music still going on there.
Yeah,
so.
the best guitar players in some way. I mean, it's guitar heaven there. The thing is, anywhere music production has become so efficient that I think it's harder to be a Nashville session musician now because it's a bit more of a factory than it used to be, even, I think, probably. And the nice thing about LA is things are very random and still kind of out of control. And I might be working with somebody stylistically any particular month. I'm doing every style under the sun.
Nice.
Except for jazz, which I'm not capable of playing, or classical. But here, I think stylistically things are much more open. And I do a lot of Italian records. Italian pop music is very melodic and in some ways old-fashioned. I work with an Italian producer. I was working on a song for him today. It was just gorgeous, and they have a lot. It reminds me of Nashville in the way that they still value a lot of the older, a lot of the, 90s stuff. It's not all laptop generated like pop music is.
Yeah.
But I think when you talk to the guitar players that we all know in Nashville, a lot of them end up taking road gigs because they just want to get off the assembly line for a minute,
Sure.
And that's probably,
get out and have fun.
Yeah,
exactly.
Tim, who is your favorite producer to work with?
Well, it's probably there's a lot of them, and like I loved working with Trevor Horn, and I love working with Rob Cavallo because he's a great guitar player. And so these days, we didn't used to do this. These days, we actually play together on records. Like I'll have a Les Paul in my hands and he'll say, let me try that. And he'll try it and then he'll do a little bit. We've done records together. Well, he'll literally play a couple of bars and I'll play a couple of bars. So I probably would say he's my favorite because we have, it's rare for the best guy. He got to the point where he was chairman of Warner Brothers Records and he was still loyal. He's been loyal to me in a way that generally the bigger people get, the less loyal they can afford to be. There's nothing wrong with that, but he's been really loyal. And he's a great guitar player. He's really enthusiastic and it's always really fun. And, there's a lot of food that gets eaten and, there's no real drinking or anything, but it's really fun. It's kind of like a party. It's really fun. So yeah, I'd say he's my favorite, but you get into the keyboard players like David Foster, who I worked with a few times, not a lot, and Patrick Leonard that I worked for a million times and with. If you're working for a brilliant keyboard player, they're going to solve all your problems harmonically. Like if you're playing something and I'm working with Pat Leonard and I come to some place where I'm going, what do I play here? He has an idea and it's a great one and you just cop it and do it. So when you're working on something and you just run into a speed bump, somebody like that, they just lift you up and over it. Foster's that way too. He's got so many good ideas, like play a Beatles part here, try this part here. And, Walter Afanasov's that way. These brilliant keyboard players, I love them because they solve all your problems. But Dan Huff was that way too. I did a Rascal Flatts record out here for Dan Huff, and it's the same thing. It's like he can tell me that my sound is just a hair too distorted, or why don't you try more of a chordal part here? It's immediate solutions to problems.
Yeah, immediate solutions, quick.
Yeah, it's just and love and support. I remember Dan said to me, he said to me, he said, a lot of guitar players kind of clam up when they work for me. And I said, dude, that's not going to happen. It was a joy. It's a joy. It's incredible. It's great. John Shanks, he's a joy to work with. It's just because he wants you to do everything you can think of. And he's really, really enthusiastic about all the colors that you put down. And then you're sharing it with him too, and he's going to play parts. It's just like it's awesome.
That's awesome. Here, this is a good, interesting question. And I know from myself, it varies, but do you have a particular preferred style neck, whether it be Fender or fret size and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I like jumbo frets, and I like frets that are almost that big, but I really like a modern compound radius neck. I like necks that are made by machines. I really like, the neck that you would find on a Sir or an Anderson or a Grosh.
Mm-hmm.
These modern, perfect necks. Now I can find Gibsons occasionally. That the reason I bought that vintage 335 is a 62. It has a great fret with really fat frets and an A+ neck. And the neck is really important to me now. I don't like a lot of the vintage Fender Strat necks. My hands just don't function well on them. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of I like the new necks.
Right.
Yep. Dave, your necks are compound radius, right?
Yeah, compound radius 10 to 14.
That's I've got to try one of your guitars. I talked to Grover at the shop, and I've got to try one soon.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I think like I said, maybe you should come down one day and just That way you can just go, here's 20 of them if you want to play them. Mm-hmm. Like that's a better way to do it.
That's a good day. Yeah.
What kind of vibe do you want? With the Telly, the Strat, or the
So we got a question from Timothy Pierce asking Tim about Tom Anderson guitars. What Tom Anderson guitars do you use, Tim?
For years, I used just a couple of Strats that had Floyd Roses, and I loved those guitars. And then I moved on. My favorite one right now is called a Bulldog, which he had to stop making because Gibson sent him a letter that said he couldn't make that shape anymore. So he's adapted into something different. But it's basically a Les Paul Jr. with P90s. But it has the neck I like, and it has a straight string pull. I love Gibsons, but I never have been able to make that headstock thing play in tune. So I love PRSs and my Mike Tuttle guitars and my Andersons because they do a more straight string pull and the G string stays in tune. It's really that simple. So now I moved on to the Bulldog, but I have 5 Andersons, and I really like them all. But I would say right now it's the Bulldog.
Cool. We're hoping to have Tom on the show one of these days. I spoke to him at NAMM.
Good.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Makes beautiful guitars.
He does.
So we have a question, speaking of Gibson, and they wanted to know what we think about the prospect of Gibson going under, all the news, blah, blah, blah. What do you guys think?
Dave? I can go first if you want. I'm happy to go first, but I don't want to steal your moment.
Well, Gibson. What do I think about that? I don't know if Gibson will cease to exist. I don't think that's. I think there'll be a reorganization, as a lot of people are saying.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I highly doubt it will cease to exist. Do I hope that someone else takes control of the company other than Henry Jankowitz, or however you say his last name? I hope so, because they really haven't been listening to people for a long time, and,
right?
And if they did, it would be a great thing. So I hope there's a bright future. We'll see what happens. I don't really, I'm not really a Gibson guy though. So, I can appreciate a great Gibson Les Paul. Yes. But, I've never sort of been a Gibson guy. I'm definitely more of a kind of a Fender guy or a Strat style guy, Telly or something like that than a Gibson. Yeah, I don't know why. It just feels more comfortable to me.
Yeah.
So I sure hope it doesn't go away because I appreciate the guitar.
Yeah, they won't go away. I mean, somebody, I think everybody hopes that they'll be sold to somebody who reinvigorates them and creates their new products with great care. My problem over the years has been just the prices. I mean, it was a marketing thing that worked for them to sell this image and charge too much money for it. And the guitars are pretty good, but a lot of them are not great. And the guitars they make that are great are just ridiculously expensive. I remember I used to be able to get an artist price from Gibson, which was 60% off.
Yeah.
And you would order the guitar and it would take a while to get to you. And sometimes that guitar would not be great, but it was usually pretty good. And then they ended that. And after that, everything they did seemed to foster less and less goodwill.
Yeah.
But beyond that, you have all of these guitar makers, such as yourself. I mean, the guitars you make, you make sure that they're great. Everything about them is great. Everything, even though they're made in high numbers or medium high numbers, everything about your guitars are great. And Tom Anderson's guitars are great. So you just can't keep releasing this image. It just was like a,
Yeah. Now it's one thing if Gibson would have high prices, but the workmanship and the greatness to back it up, maybe we could buy into that. But to get a mediocre guitar at a very high price, it's kind of
yeah.
And what I mean by a very high price is over $5,000.
Yeah,
or it's like, or even $5,000.
Yeah, yeah, 4,500, $5,000.
Yeah, and I think everybody at a certain point they knew that Gibson was trading on their history and kind of not. It was not an honest thing. I mean, it's like isn't this great because we made the Stradivarius of guitars, the 59 Les Paul, and here's the new version of that, but it's not really
right. It's
the new version.
It's always slightly different and never close to what.
Yeah, never quite.
And then let's talk about the new guitars.
Oh, well,
okay. Have you seen the Flying V?
No.
The new Flying V?
It's a ripoff of the Jackson.
It's a very extremely. In fact, look it up, Tim, if you get a chance. It's a very modern take on a Flying V, and the response has basically been, "What the fuck are you doing?" And the funny thing is, it's almost an exact knockoff of a Jackson Flying V that existed. I don't know how many years ago.
Right.
And then there's all the strange colored guitars they've been doing, the limited release. There's these 70s striped sort of ones that they've just come out with that are sort of like
the hot rod car striped 70s kind of motif. And then there's the neon Les Pauls, which are truly also special. And you just look at it going, what the heck are you doing? Who asked for this?
Who asked for this? Who asked for these? Are they selling? No, I would bet to say. I'm not saying that the guitar might not be okay. It might be a decent guitar. I'm not sure. But if you talk to 9 out of 10 dealers that carry Gibson, they'll go, "Oh my God." Because when they did all those standards that had the robo tuners and everything, all the dealers were going, "Oh my God." No one wanted robo tuners. No one wanted what was it? Wasn't there a detachable pickguard that was a weird thing? No one wanted the changed neck shape or the wider nut. No one wanted any of this stuff. Like talk about not listening to your customer base. I mean, it's like,
well, and
it's like me coming out right now. It's like going, you know what? Forget it. I'm not doing any more of my Marshall-based amps. I'm doing jazz amps.
Yeah, right.
How's that going to go?
The thing is, these big companies, they're not responsive. They're not quick. We talked about earlier in the evening. Which is great. That was a couple hours ago. We talked about being able to adapt, and big companies, like you'll see it. I've been to the offices of one of the other big companies, and it's basically just guys who take meetings, basically.
Yeah. Oh,
and you said it, not me. So you're basically. How do you? I mean, and I talked to guys. This guy who worked at one of the record companies, who said we can't move fast enough to compete anymore because I have to have 17 meetings just to release a video, whereas the people I'm competing with release the video the next day.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of that. They can't function anymore, and so they're getting guys like you and Tom Anderson and people who are lean and mean and figuring stuff out and pivoting constantly. It's the pivot. You literally can wake up one morning and go, oh, we have to do the opposite of what we're doing. Now, if you're working at a big company, that's impossible. You take that up the chain of command and you can't do it and you lose your job.
Yeah.
So there's a little of that. Also, I think Pete and I talked about this. We are at a point with guitars where they're not as popular as they used to be, in the sense that popular culture, it's somewhere else now. It's the iPhone and the iPad and it's all the other gizmos and gadgets. So there has to be a trimming of fat somewhere, and it's going to happen at Gibson and Fender because they're making so many guitars. And the other thing we talked about, if you want a Gibson Les Paul, you can find it used. You don't have to buy a new one. You can just go buy it used.
It's true.
So how are they going to keep this thing afloat? It needs to be downsized and remade. I mean, the hope is that somebody who loves guitars will take it over and turn them into a piece of art again.
I don't believe me. I don't want to see Gibson go away in any way, shape, or form. I hope that happens. I mean, it's sort of like watching, legacy brands like Marshall and stuff kind of disintegrate a bit. And it's like, oh God, that sucks. I don't want to see that happen to that kind of iconic brand. You don't want to see that happen. You want to see
when I see a Marshall, some Marshall at Best Buy that's actually a Bluetooth speaker or something.
Yeah, you're just kind of going, oh God.
Oh.
Yeah, it makes you cringe.
But hey, let's give it to them. No, the Bluetooth speaker actually that they make actually does sound good.
Well, good. Okay, then.
It's corrected. It's kind of good, and I'm sure the refrigerator works fine.
Yeah, I would love to. I'll be honest. I would love to have one of those refrigerators.
Yeah, I wanted one when I saw one too. They're expensive though. That's the problem. How you doing on time, Tim?
I'm okay. Well, let's go for a few more minutes. I mean,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. Let's see.
Time kind of flies on the show.
If you'd have told me that we were going to do this for this long, I would have thought that's impossible. But it's
been 3 hours, and
it's amazing.
Like
it's like, right? I don't want to stop. It's like I did this session with. There used to be a guy named Shelly Yakis.
I remember Shelly
Yakis. Famous guy.
Yeah.
And what would happen in the studio after you'd been there for like 10 or 12 hours, you had a hard time leaving because it became like this womb. And he said it's like, here you are in this great place. You're surrounded by all the things you love the most. You just can't leave. I mean, it's that kind of feeling. I think the conversation is like, I could tell. I mean, it's like, the stories are there, but some of them you can't tell. It's like with Henley, we had to be very, like, you would have gone further, but we had Pete to chime in and go, hey guys, I had a great experience with him. So some of the stories you don't want to talk out of school, but there's so many, the history we've seen so much.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
You have to be respectful too of some people and stuff like that, or if you get to be like Quincy Jones at that age, maybe you don't care anymore.
Yeah, and there are some people that you can safely go a little further with and be critical of, but I don't know. I ended up getting to work with most of my heroes and meeting some of my other heroes, and it's been great.
That's
I
awesome.
got to say the same thing, kind of basically.
Yeah, you do. You have to say the same
sort
thing.
of context, but sort of the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, I got to work with
Yeah.
many of my heroes. I hope to still work with a few more.
Yeah.
And
well, the guitar thing is alive and well. Rick Knowles is a producer I worked with a lot, and he's the guy who did that Belinda Carlisle record. He emailed me this week, and he does Lana Del Rey's stuff right now. So
that's great.
He does all her stuff. And he emailed me this week. I'm going to go have breakfast with him, and he was talking about how, hey, I heard Gibson's going out of business now. So he's not connected like we are. He doesn't know. He's a songwriter, producer. So he saw the headline, and he said, the laptop is the go for new musicians. It's kind of sad, isn't it? And we've all gotten past that. I went to the NAMM show. The guitar is strong. The electric guitar is super strong. It's just not part of celebrity culture.
Yeah.
But I mean, I have tons of people joining my masterclass. I have tons of people looking at my YouTube videos. You guys have the same experience. I mean, it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
And it's healthy for those who are willing to adapt and try and do good stuff, you know?
Oh. I have hope sometimes, like when you see bands like Greta Van Fleet. You know about them?
Yeah.
Have you heard them?
Yeah.
I actually got to see them live for a minute. And like I'm just watching them and I'm going, okay, yes, it's very Zeppelin-esque, okay. But they were really great as musicians. The bass player in particular was amazing, and he played keyboards and all this stuff. And it was just nice to see such young people playing guitar music, you know.
Right.
And that was that made me have a little hope.
well, Dave, I mean, the thing is, I do videos for Instagram, and if you watch the guitar players on Instagram and you start to follow the ones that you like, they play circles around me, and it's tasteful, and it's all the parts and all the styles and all the complexity, and then, you know, some of it could be simpler, but the guitar players on Instagram are phenomenal. All these guys that I follow, it's crazy how good they are.
There's a lot of great,
and girls
great talent
too,
yep.
guys and girls. So and that really wasn't the case like 10 years ago. There wasn't. I mean, there's far more interest now.
Yeah,
I mean, Pete was talking about that. It's for some reason in the 90s, it all kind of nobody was interested in practicing the guitar, and then somehow it must have been 10 years ago, because what I'm hearing now is just people who are just crazy good. Young people who are just crazy good.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of like singer-songwriter fingerstyle type of that. I see a lot of that on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Cool. Let's see if there's any other questions. Oh, this is cool. I just saw this. Anybody know Lindsay L? Have you heard of her?
No.
Check her out. She's a cute blonde, countryish, popish, but she's country guitar-oriented music, and it very good. Very like I was playing some for my wife. My wife was very into it. So
I'll make a note of it. I'll look for it.
Cool.
Yeah, Lindsay L. And it's guitar-oriented, and she got some cute videos of her painting her guitar, and it's guitar-oriented music. That's the thing. Like, I think country music has become kind of the guitar-oriented music.
It has for now. I mean, they inherited it, and they inherited classic rock, and it makes me jealous, frankly. But it's just the way it is right now. You know,
it'll shift.
And it all happens. You know, the cowboy hat. You know, some of them have to wear cowboy hats to do that. You know, so just the way it is.
Yeah.
You don't control. How this. So you kind of the thing is, for an artist these days, they kind of have to do everything themselves. and it's a tall order, but it's all, if you can poke through the noise. Record labels were never very fair to artists that they didn't promote. They were good with the people they promoted, but for every artist they promoted, there were 10 or 20 artists that they wouldn't promote. And it's kind of better now because you don't need a record company if you're an artist. So you actually own your own business. You own your own business, and that's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah, kind of have a little bit of your own, set your own destiny.
Yeah,
in a way. Let's see. Okay, so the question: what is Dave going to be doing in Detroit May 19th? Eggnator amp building class for Eggnator is the same day there. He said.
Oh, is it really? Are you going?
I'm not going, but
we're putting on a show at a very famous venue in Detroit with some friends of mine for this band Seduce that I grew up watching in the 80s. And also we're going to have one of our Friedman artists, Cairo Knife Fight, on the show. And it's a big old venue called Harpo's in Detroit. Harpo's was the premier sort of, it's been there since the 30s. It was the Harper Theater originally. And it was sort of the premier rock venue of Detroit. It's kind of quite large. It's about, I don't even know, a couple thousand people at least of a venue, or 2,500 or something. And there's a new owner, another iconic club owner that used to own several other clubs in Detroit, that has taken it over, and he is been slowly restoring the venue. So I wanted to get involved in doing kind of a big show and sort of keeping this venue alive, because it had a huge place in rock history. And it was a fun thing to do, and so that's kind of what that show's about.
Cool.
So
Dave,
are you going to go to GitCon next year?
I think I might be going to GitCon next year. Yes.
I really want to go, and I may have, I may try and invite myself, but at the same time, I wonder if it's the right fit for me.
Sure.
I mean, but if you're going, Pete has been very gracious about getting me into it.
Yeah.
And yeah, let me know. Let me know if you're going to go.
Yeah, at least tentatively in my head, I'm going. After this last year, I said I was going to go. So
yeah, good.
We might also, go as a company and sponsor.
I hope you do.
Throw some amps there, and
it'd be great.
And stuff like that.
I thought it was a great thing. I looked at a lot of the videos, and I really love the Henning. I love him.
Yeah, he's so funny.
Yeah,
he's a nutcase, but he's so funny.
Yeah.
Right now, I keep seeing, ever since NAMM, he's been on vacation in Malaysia or something.
Oh yeah, he had a beautiful.
And I keep seeing his pictures from Malaysia. I'm like going, oh man, I got to really ask him where this place is. I think
it looked gorgeous,
go.
Right? It looked gorgeous.
There's like little huts on the beach and just like this gorgeous atmosphere.
Yeah,
and,
Europeans. Europeans. They have no problem traveling. I have an Italian friend who goes to this amazing place in Thailand that he might even buy a condo there. I mean, they go everywhere.
Oh man, Thailand. That's an interesting thing. I remember one of my Facebook friends that I don't even know her very well. In fact, I don't even know how I know her.
Yeah.
But I am friends with her, and she was in Thailand, and on a little island off the coast of Thailand or something. And she was posting pictures, and I just messaged her. I'm like going, where are you? I want to know the name of the resort. And the funny thing is, I looked it up, and it was literally like $100 a week. No, I'm not kidding. Like,
That's crazy.
The airfare is going to cost you, a decent amount of money to get there. But once you're there, you're going to stay in a little hut on the beach for like $100 a week. And like you just walk out your door and you're on the beach, and you know, it's just a nice little hut with a bed and everything. It's fine, you know. And you know, also, you know, friends that I know that have traveled there, it's like you eat for like $3 a day.
Fantastic.
Like,
amazing.
I'm like going, this sounds nice. Let's
go.
Yeah, let's get away.
Henning's pictures definitely look cool.
Oh yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I'm sure his cost more than that, but
yeah. Hey, waiting for an alibi is asked a few times, so I want to ask this question. Andy from Shut Up and Play is friends with Tim. What can you tell us?
Oh, you know, I had some nice conversations with him because I did a version of Purple Rain on YouTube that was taken. It was after Prince passed away, and whoever was managing his businesses gave me a copyright strike for it. And on YouTube, that's a tough thing. Actually, it kind of makes you feel pretty bad when somebody does it. That's a serious thing, you know. And I was really proud of the video, and it was getting good views, and everybody else who showed that song on YouTube was fine. Somehow I got singled out, and I can understand kind of why. And I wrote them a really nice email offering to do anything I could to get them to reverse it. And I think they finally did reverse it, but it was 3 or 4 months later. So I had a conversation with him about it, and he kind of helped me through it because he had taught it, and it was his got great numbers. Andy is more, I mean, he's the best. When I started doing popular songs on YouTube, like Hendrix songs or whatever, and he started doing them at around the same time, I thought, oh, this guy he's gonna outrun me, and he definitely has. He does it purely for the love of it, and I made a video where I was in the studio doing a Zeppelin song that I had to do for this Zeppelin remake record, and I made a video and I sent an email to all my subscribers saying, this is the guy who taught me the song. I actually went to his video and learned the song from his hands. And I made a video about that and showed myself in the studio. I tried to get him to monetize in a way, and I think he has monetized, but only in a modest way. I think he takes donations through Patreon or something. But I looked at his video collection by chance just last week, and it's even more huge. He never stops. He's so devoted. I don't know. I mean, we don't even know what he looks like. It's just the guitar. And do you guys know this guy? You don't know him. See, I'm really connected to all these guys on YouTube, and all he does is teach you all these great songs, and it's just a picture of his hands in the guitar. You don't even know what he looks like. He's one of the best. Anyway, he's.
Well, there you go.
I'm happy to be friends with him.
That's cool. How about this? Can we ask Tim about real tape echo versus digital delays for recording? What are your thoughts on the differences and what's worth using versus the real thing?
At this point, I just sold my Roland 501 Chorus. Tom Bukovac showed me his a number of years ago, and I went out and got a perfect one, and I stopped using it. The problem with real tape echo is it's a mechanical machine that's going to break and has to be repaired.
It'll break every 5 minutes.
There you go. So so I finally sold mine, and they're really popular right now. I paid $1,200 for it, and I think I got $1,900 or $1,700 or something like that for it.
Wow.
And the thing is, the plugins in Pro Tools now are so delicious, for lack of a better word, that I get the delays I want from Echo Boy in a great measure. And also, like, my Line 6 Echo Park is a delay that I love. It's really lo-fi. I also, because of Shanks, I ended up getting this Korg SDD 3000, from back in the day. So I like the digital machines because they don't break. And when you actually do music, there's just certain things you can't.
It's got to work.
Yeah, you can't have stuff. You've got to get the music done.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, the thing I love about delays, I'm very, very specific. The delay has to be dark. it has to have the ability, like if somebody releases a delay pedal and you can't roll down the top end on the delay, I'm not interested. Also, it has to have modulation. So, tape delays generally do that naturally, right? They do the flutter, the wow and flutter, and the darkening. But digital delays do it now too. So for me, I have to have a delay where I can roll off the top end, and then the actual delay hides underneath the guitar. It thickens the tone. It creates a float that you don't actually hear. I don't like to hear the trails. I like to hear the float that happens when you're using a delay, and it's rubbing underneath the note that you hear out front. And then I like a delay to have modulation because I'm not going to use chorus, but I want the modulation. So the delay rubs all the time.
That was a little bit of a wobble to it.
That's it.
Cool. Now, do you typically...
Have you ever heard the Free the Tone delay, Tim?
Is that one of your products again?
No.
Oh. What is it? What is it?
Free the Tone. It's a guy out of Japan. He used to work for Providence years ago, and he makes a delay that looks like a 2290. Even the whole screen looks like, with the numbers and it's literally like it's a pedal, and it's got a totally old school style delay, like a 2290 operates. Literally, think about that.
Yeah.
With the modulation section and the high and low pass filters, and very simple because you can just look at it and go, well, here's the delay time. Great. You're going to look it up, aren't you?
I'm going to make a note of it. Yeah, I'm going to check it out, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
I have one you can borrow if you want.
Okay, I'll borrow it.
You want to check it out. It's a very cool sounding. I like how it operates because to me, it reminds me of an old rack piece,
Yeah.
which was very simple to operate. And, just no hidden parameters or anything. It's just all right there on your screen, and you can just tap in what you want, the mix, however you want it to sound. But it operates like an old delay.
I'll borrow it from you. I'll be there next week.
No problem.
You got a lot of stuff to pick up, Tim.
Yeah, I do.
Hey, Dave, we got a question for you from David Curtis, who wants to know about the Naked amp. Tell us everything you can. I think you talked about this before.
Naked amp was an amp I originally did with Billy Howard, essentially what it was a he liked the Nailer amplifier, and it was my take of adding a Nailer front end into a Marshall power amp. So it was a 100-watt amp. Originally, I had modified his Marshall to be that because he specifically asked for that. And so we did that. And then it became, it's a little different than a Nailer. And it became something that he loved. So then I made him a couple of his own amps that I handmade years ago. And he's been using those ever since. And for a while, I was making a Naked amplifier under the Friedman name. And it wasn't like widely popular at the time. So eventually we just sort of discontinued it. And now there seems to be a lot more interest in it now.
Yeah,
maybe I should make it again.
There was a question of what amp currently is similar.
None.
Okay.
It's kind of a unique thing. As Tim can attest, the Nailer circuit doesn't really sound necessarily exactly like anything. It has its elements of things, but it's a much smoother sort of texture and tone, kind of a darker amplifier in a lot of respects. And it wasn't like I was specifically asked to do, copy the Nailer front end, but can you put it in this Marshall? And so then we kind of came upon a recipe that worked for him. So
awesome.
It wasn't exactly me copying Nailer. In fact, I'm friends with Nailer, so it wasn't me trying to steal the circuit or anything like that. It was I was asked specifically for him, and then I just brought it out because he uses it, and we might as well offer it.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Hey Tim, what about the? Someone wants to know about the string butler. I guess you did a video about that or something?
I did a video about that, and it's a good device. You can't put it on vintage style tuners, and I have several Gibsons with that, but it basically solves the straight, Gibson headstocks. They go like this, and they were meant to be played by players in the 50s. This is my theory. They were designed for players who had a wound G string and didn't pull strings. So it didn't matter that the headstock went like this. And then everybody in the world has been able to keep their Gibsons in tune except for me. For some reason, I still can't keep my G string in tune on a Gibson. And so the string butler is a solution for that, and it really does work. It takes, it's still, you still have to mother it a little bit, but it relieves a great percentage of that, that angle. It's really worth it. It's inexpensive. You just have to make sure that your tuners, it'll fit under your tuners.
I'm gonna check it out. Let's check it out.
Well, what do you think, guys? Should we save? It's 9:30. I'm beginning to wilt.
Okay. No, it sounds good, Tim.
But the thing is, I'm inspired to do this again, and I feel like I only gave you like 1% of the stories that I could have given you, but they're not really. The stories are not. They're not like decadent or anything. It's just more like scheduling problems and gig problems and.
Oh, we'd love to hear about all that stuff.
Great.
You're welcome to come back anytime.
Yeah, let's do it again, and I'll maybe prepare some stuff.
Maybe we'll get you on with Pete.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
He's I don't know how he does everything he does, but he's definitely one of the best people I have ever met in my life. Love that guy. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Does he? Dave, you're with him all the time.
I'm with him all the time.
He probably doesn't. He's probably in his studio working like all the time.
Yeah, he's here every day, except today for some reason. Like he's not here.
No, he was editing our video with Laurie Bacillo
he
was doing that at home. But you probably don't see. What I'm trying to say is you probably don't see him. It's probably just in there.
We see him.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah. Daily, basically. So
that's nice.
But he
lucky.
Works a lot.
Yeah.
That's cool. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
No, Tim, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you on for 3.5 hours. So
unbelievable.
Thank you time.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it was easy.
That's the thing. We often are like, well, maybe this one will be shorter this time, and then like it's just like before we know it, we look at the clock and it's 9:30.
Yeah,
and it's like I guess not.
I'm astounded. I am.
Well, we didn't quite make 4 hours this time.
Well, that's me. Right. You would if I didn't gracefully just kind of suggest we'd still be going. So thanks, man. It's great.
No, it's awesome. Well, thank you, and
thank you.
I hope you have a great weekend. Can you want to just tell people how to get see your stuff, where to find?
Yeah,
your
all
videos?
you have to do. That's the thing. I'm pretty easy to find. If you Google me, everything comes up. But if you go to my YouTube channel and you want to check out the masterclass, there's a link below every YouTube video. And it's really that simple. Or you can go to my website and just click the word masterclass on my website. But if you feel like taking the trial, there's no risk. And it's not for everybody, but I have a couple of thousand members and I adore them. And I keep trying to, add great stuff to behind the wall. And if you don't want to do that, then I'm on YouTube all the time too. So there you go.
Awesome.
Very
cool. All right. Well, guys, have a great weekend. Dave, thanks again. I hope you have a good weekend too.
Thank you.
And
right.
Again, if you get anybody wants shirts, email me, tonetalkmark@gmail.com. And we'll be back in 2 weeks. I'll be announcing the next guest soon. And that's it. Thanks again, Tim. Really appreciate it.
Dave, I'll see you next week. Thank you, Mark. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
All right.
Bye-bye. You guys take care.